All right. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our redeemer, and it is in his name, which is his authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect this message. Amen. Amen. How's everybody doing on this rising? Welcome, welcome, welcome to everybody who's on. As always, we give all the honor and praise to the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. We give all honor and praise to him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. We're thankful to each and every one of you for spending some time with us on all these different platforms on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and our podcast. I guess once we get the podcast going, having issues once again, but we'll try and get the podcast on ASAP. And we're thankful for another opportunity to get into this word together. And we're thankful and grateful for another opportunity to be able to speak on what the Most High has for us. We're appreciative of you guys taking time out today to spend with us and to grow with us and to learn with us. And we are excited to continue to be on every rising with you all on all these platforms. Shalom to Dawn, MB, Sister Rhonda. Hopefully, Sister Rhonda, you got a few things emailed to you. We have some more things we'll try to get to you ASAP. Sister Sharice, how you doing? Flo, Bounty Blessings. Everybody, Lottie Dottie and everybody. I'm going to continue to try and tag some people in here and make sure that we are seeing what the Most High has for us today. And thank you for being on with us. Today I want to talk about, I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about my wife once again, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. Please check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest. You can do so at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. Hello, how you doing, Dawn? On Facebook. We got Dawn on YouTube, Dawn on Facebook. How you guys doing? Hello, Sister Deja. I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right. I said Amina Elmin. I don't know if I said that correctly or not. Thank you for being part of the community. We appreciate you. Hello, Sister Tracy. And everybody, we're still trying to get some stuff caught up and make sure people are getting the everything for the all the information that we have out. Also, too, you can check. My wife has this set up. So if you go to the website, Kofi-Ofori.com, Kofi-Ofori.com, if you go there to the website and you you go to the calendar, at the top of the calendar or somewhere in there, my wife has put up on the on the calendar on the website. She's put a link that you can click on that says recurring events. So reoccurring events that we're doing all the time. And so information for the Thursday Rising Prayer Service, all these different things that we're doing, early rising Bible study, et cetera, et cetera. I think women's meeting, men's meeting probably on there as well. You can go there, click on that, and you'll be able to get all the information that you guys need. Hello, Sister Beverly. How you doing? Sister Kimberly, Minister Anais, Jacobo Salworth. How you doing? To everybody on, we appreciate your presence today. And we're thankful and grateful for you joining us today. And we're excited to continue moving in what the Most High wants us to move inside of. Today, oh, okay, Dawn, TikTok Tamika. Okay, cool. So, Brian, thanks for being part of the community as well. Today, I want to talk about they disrespect you. They disrespect you. When people say this doesn't matter, or we don't like this, or we don't believe in this, et cetera, it's because they disrespect you. And to Marsha, Malcolm, Betty, Isabella, and Solomon, Daddy loves you all very much. To everybody who's on here, whether you agree with us, disagree with us, feel free to listen in, to make comments, to challenge, question, etc. We ask that you do so within context. It would probably help us on both ends. Nevertheless, though, feel free to be able to come on in and have context with us, contextual conversation, and to be able to learn of what the Most High wants us to be able to learn from and to grow from and to grow through, and to see it from the proper cultural perspective, which is what we're big on these lives, is to make sure that culturally we are sound, culturally we are correct, culturally we are on point. And when we speak on this stuff today, hello, Sister Deborah, how you doing? When we speak on these things today, so hello, Sister Betty, we want to make sure that we comprehend they disrespect you. How you doing, Lee? So when I say disrespect, and we should probably talk about the word respect. The word respect, you'll see in the Bible words like respect, fear, not even respect. They usually use fear or reverence. They're talking about respect. They're talking about to give respect. Even the word worship in its most basic, if we give a really basic working definition for worship, worship is just extreme respect. And how you doing, Sheila? And a lot of times when we're dealing with conversations of any type, anything going on in the world, not just even biblically or something like that, but just when we're dealing with things with anything around the world, we're usually dealing with a place where people are not respectful of who you are. And when somebody's disrespectful of who you are, it means that not only can they not accept you, but they cannot accept your culture. And usually, when somebody's disrespectful of your culture, what really is going on is they're saying, well, I'm not going to respect your culture because I will put my culture above yours. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think your culture should come first. But to try and listen to somebody speak and to not know where they come from is is suicide and genocide, spiritually, physically, emotionally, psychologically, physiologically, etc. It's just genocide. You're trying to kill off of people. You don't think of it as killing off of people because you don't believe that you're physically harming somebody, but we know that you can kill people with your tongue, right? How you doing? Is it Dan? Dan Gotti? Dan Gotti? How you doing? Icon? Is it IC0NR 33D? I apologize. I don't know exactly what that's saying, but thank you for being on with us. We appreciate you. Right? Icon Reed, possibly. But we don't comprehend that in not accepting one's culture is to not accept the person. Right? And to disrespect one's culture is to say that I can no longer hear you. And so the only way that you can fit into my society is I must disrespect you. That is the way of the world, not the way of what we go by, because we're in the system or in the world, but not of it, right? But we must comprehend that people are very quick to disrespect you because they're very quick to disrespect your culture, right? How you doing, Sister Marion? People are quick to disrespect you because they disrespect your culture and they believe that the only way you can be respected is to take on everything that they say and how they live and what their society thinks. And if you go by what their society thinks enough, then you become somebody who is palatable, right? You said I used to be very judgmental when a peer tried to teach me about Yah some years ago. I used to as well, right? Because we were brought up in the system that says be disrespectful to others. Hello, Sister Shima. Hello, Nana. How you doing? So when we're talking about a lot of stuff we're speaking on, and we're talking about we have to have a place that we can cultivate and gentrify and be about ourselves and deal with our own intellectual quotient or IQ, right? And not be DQ'd or disqualified because somebody says that your IQ is not based on theirs. We have to be aware, even an IQ test. What is an IQ test? And thanks for following us, 12341, Christ 12341, right? When we're talking about IQ, even, right? The IQ, the intellectual quotient, if you will. What is that even based off of? Thanks for being part of the community, Lee Whitey. What is that even based off of? Like, what is that based off of? When somebody says, um, we need you to take an IQ test, they're not even talking about something that shows how smart all human beings are. We make that mistake. Yeah, somebody else's standards, right? That's what we're being tested on. How you doing, user 244? Thanks for being part of the community. We make the mistake of believing that when we take an IQ test, it means that we're taking something where they're looking at all human values, how all human beings think, how all of us love one another, how all of us speak the language of everybody. No, it is an intellectual quotient. They're talking about what they believe intellect is. And so when you don't pass the test, they say that your IQ is low, which is their way of saying that you are stupid. And then they begin to say, well, let us go ahead and find ways to help you, which means basically, hey, let us find ways to make sure that we can get them on board with how we think. Thank you, Bounty Blessings. I appreciate the love. And thank you for all the likes, the shares, the gifts across the board. We appreciate you all. We appreciate everybody on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and the podcast for listening in on this rising. Thank you for being part of the community, Renee. Appreciate that. So, yeah, they're basing off of European concepts. And they tested according to their culture, right? Adaptation to randomness. That's a new one, but I like that. At least new one for me, right? Yeah, IQ tests are not a great a marker of intelligence. They're not. Even with this stuff going on with the Ukraine, once again, if Russia comes into the Ukraine, Russia is trying to make it out to be like their IQ is based off we can come in here and we can take over and we'll just throw out some random thing that never really took place. Technically, people don't even know that like there is a such thing as denazification. People think that's nonsense, but denazification actually was something that was supposed to take place. Russia, America, France, England were supposed to make it happen. They never did. Right, and they allowed it. Matter of fact, they started allowing Nazis to escape to certain places and started using Nazis. So the same America that will act like they were anti-Nazi used the Nazis, just like Russia. The same Russia that's now attacking, Russia was using that. If we need any more proof of that, just look at the space race. How you doing, Big Brother Thomas? Right. So we're busy taking on other people's intelligence. That's why we got to be in the system. You got to be able to translate what they're saying, but you can't be of it. Don't become Republican, Democrat, communist, whatever it is they need you to be, even independent. Independent is still being set up in the system to where you're voting for whoever you think is the lesser of two evils. Don't get caught up in that. On the American side, they see the IQ test. People don't even recognize. I won't even we won't necessarily say this is the first IQ test, but the first time we started talking about something using words similar to IQ test, it comes from a place of France. En français, in France, they legit were telling people they came up with an IQ test. Now, it wasn't based off of black or white yet. It was just based off of they had what they would consider to be like the outskirts of Paris and other places that were supposed to be more centralized, and they believed that these were country bumpkins. And so they created a test that basically, if you didn't speak French with the accent they did, they set up a test to where if you didn't eat the foods that they ate, they set up a test to where if you didn't use the words that they used in central France, then you were basically not as smart as them. Somebody in the United States of America who was into eugenics, remember the person who comes up with eugenics is the cousin of Charles Darwin. Remember Charles Darwin wrote his book. It's his famous book that we don't often say the whole title of, which is called The Origin of Species, The Theory of Evolution, The Struggle for Survival of Favored Races. So Charles Darwin wrote his book on evolution to show why white people were on top and black people were on the bottom and everybody else got in between, and how white people needed to struggle to survive, right? Because that's what it is, survival of the fittest. Therefore, they're trying to say that white people are the most fit, right? So that's what you had going on. And you had the struggle going on. You had these people fighting with one another. You had all this stuff going on because there was this fight that's trying to put white on top, black on the bottom. And so when your children go to school today, they're still dealing with IQ tests. Oh, yeah, that's in the title. People don't know that, right? But if you look at the full title, once again, it's the origin of species, the theory, not the fact, but the theory of evolution. And what is the theory of evolution trying to get across? That there's a struggle for survival for favored races. So around that time, you're having stuff like the white man's burden is starting to come into play. Manifest destiny. Matter of fact, the guy who wrote the Jungle Book, Rudyard Kipling, he made it a point and wrote to people in America and said, hey, you got to make sure you keep up manifest destiny. What is manifest destiny? What is manifest destiny? Manifest destiny is supposed to be that it is the destiny of white people to manifest their culture around the world. It's all cultural, right? When you go and you look at Washington, D.C., and you see an obelisk over here, they've taken somebody else's story and made it about Washington. Washington is now Osiris. They put the goddess Columbia on top of the Senate building. She's now supposed to be Isis. And then all the children and everything that come out of that's supposed to be Heru, the promise. They're taking their religion and putting it on you, and then they're telling you there's separation of church and state. Meanwhile, when you say that you worship the Most High, they say you are foolish, and they say, how dare you say that? They say, why do you keep trying to be religious? But all they're teaching you is religion. You said it should be called energy quotient, the amount of wisdom you have. Well, even with that, they'd have to change the test because it's not based off of wisdom. But I get what you're saying. Most definitely. They just said I was a psychology slash sociology major, they taught us to almost worship Darwin and Freud. Yeah, and by the way, Freud is a pedophile who was homosexual out there trying to tell you how to be in marriages. But Freud goes back to Greco-Roman mentality, right? Back to Plato. Platonic relationships are relationships you don't want any part of, because Plato believed that it was crazy for a husband and wife to marry one another. So Plato actually taught that the best relationship you could have was about being in your 40s as a male and then mess with a male little boy, 12, 13, 14 years old. He said that was the perfect relationship. And that's where you get platonic relationships. You and I think that platonic relationships have to do with, oh, we just don't, we're men and women that we just don't have sexual energy. But that's because women back then were just supposed to pass on seed. Women had no rights. And so they were only supposed to basically just be used to have babies and keep it moving. The reality though is that, like, we obviously in our culture we lift up women, but they hate your culture, right? They hate your culture. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with culture, and people don't want to talk about that. Yeah, and they taught it at an HBCU. You're saying, yeah, at an HBCU, because HBCUs are just blackface on the same white rhetoric. And if you don't like my saying, so I'm sorry to tell you, but like the HBCUs, they're not teaching you your culture, right? They're still having you, be in a fraternity. Your fraternity, your sorority, what do? You pledge, and you're pledging Greek. You're becoming Greek, right? Now, if we be honest, Greco-Roman people, Greece, especially before Greece became what we know it as, and even once it became what we know it as today, Greece was people that look similar in color to us. Nevertheless, though, right, they're not pledging African culture. They're not pledging Kemet. You're not pledging Shui. You're not pledging Ashanti. You're not pledging Igbo. You're not pledging Avda. You're not pledging Cherokee. You're not pledging Taino, right? You're pledging Greek. It's culture. And when you bring your culture into something else, they hate you. They disrespect you. You said Bill Gates is considered super smart and doesn't even have a college education. Facts. Because college education doesn't really matter. College is just more a racket. It's a scam. It's something to be like, if you make enough finance and you can, it really, all of us should do as much of this as possible. If you can homeschool your children and you can make sure that you lay out something, an inheritance, not when you die, but once they get to be about 21, especially males, once they get to be about 21, right? The way our culture works, you should make sure that you have already invested in them, set things up, and have them have a business, and let their business be the business of their people. Thank you for being part of the community 407. I don't know how to pronounce the name. Is it Enrique or Enriquire or Enriquire? I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but thanks for being part of the community. Nita Robinson, thanks for being with us today. You said Fifth Element. You said this is such wrong information. Okay, tell me what's wrong. And hello to you, because that would be a respectful way of greeting one another first. Then secondly, like, tell me what's so wrong about it. I had no problem with you questioning, saying stuff, this and that, or whatever, but tell me what's wrong. Am I wrong to say that Darwin wrote a book called The Origin of Species, The Theory of Evolution, The Struggle for Survival of Favored Races? Am I wrong to say that his cousin is the one who wrote the book on eugenics? Am I wrong to say that the intellectual quotient or the IQ test was something that was actually created in France, and then somebody who was into eugenics found it and brought it back? Am I wrong to say that the Greeks actually would be darker in color? As a matter of fact, Justinian and Theodore is a great example. Don't forget about the emperor. Oh wow, I'm forgetting his name. The African emperor. Not Maximus, not blah blah, not this, not that. There's so many of them. It'll come up. Septimius Severus. When you're saying that I'm just outright wrong, see, we are about contextual facts. So show me the context and show me the facts that I've said that are wrong. I haven't even gone into things that would be more theoretical. You said I heard IQ was started. Yeah, that's what we said. Well, some of that is included as well in the French thing. But yeah, we're talking about it came from France. And then we have somebody who actually studied psychology and sociology on here, and she's telling you her experience. The first thing, see, they got to disrespect you. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. On so many levels. Okay, so what are the levels? What are the levels? Literally, out of what I just said, tell me the wrong level. See, you're disrespectful of me to say that I have no sense and don't even recognize I teach, don't recognize that I've been to schools and I have the little bit of degrees that don't even matter anymore. Once I realized that the degrees don't matter, I stopped. Or were we wrong to say that Bill Gates didn't need a college education to be considered somebody who was smart? I mean, you're saying on so many levels, that's just an arbitrary, that's a random thing. Like, what do you actually mean? You said much you say about Old Testament. What do I say about Old Testament? Because that's not what we're speaking about today. But okay, what do I say about the Old Testament that's wrong? You teach and study as well. Okay, that's great. I didn't disrespect you and say you don't know anything that you're talking about. You did that with me. So I'm willing to listen to somebody who's learned as yourself. We'll put everything on hold to make sure that we respect you and respect where you come from, even though you won't respect the culture that I bring up. You tell me why I'm so wrong. You said straight shoot, no chase. You said information is a formulation of ideas based on one's perspectives, respect the man's knowledge. Yeah, and by the way, I'm not saying, you said you mean no disrespect. No, what I'm saying, okay, well, thank you for not being disrespectful, even though your whole thing is you're wrong on so many levels. I teach, blah, blah. Let's get past all that. So once again, I said hello to you. I said, and welcome for being on. We welcome your question, but you haven't given a question. You've just basically done ad hominem, right? You know what ad hominem is if you've been to any kind of Bible or college or seminary, et cetera, et cetera. You're trained in all religions. Okay, so once again, what am I saying that's wrong about the Old Testament? Now you've taken it from what I've said is wrong, because you said I was wrong on so many levels. Now you're saying I'm wrong about the Old Testament. So please tell me what I'm wrong about in the Old Testament, if you don't mind being respectful. We're waiting on you, not trying to rush you, but this is a live that we've come to make sure that we're talking about things for the community and betterment of selves and coming together. And your whole thing has been to say how wrong we are. Hey, babe, how you doing? My wife is on the Honorable Maya. Once again, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, or website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. Hello, Moto. How you doing? Right. Because you keep saying about the Old Testament. I don't know where you got that from. If you're saying I'm wrong off of YouTube videos you've seen, if you're saying I'm wrong off of the TikTok videos, stuff on Facebook, stuff on the podcast. So let me just tell you, as far as Old Testament, you would be wrong to say that we talk about Old Testament, because we don't believe that there's an old or new. Somebody wrote that in. Originally, there was only one testament, right? Nicolaitan doctrine, which you're taught about in Revelation, since you say you study, right? So I'm talking about Revelation chapter 2, starting in verse 12. There's two doctrines that are mentioned there. There's a doctrine of Balaam, and there's a doctrine. Yeah, well, you said the Jewish part doesn't matter. I'm talking about you said that I'm wrong as far as Old Testament. So originally there's only one testament, right? Originally there's only one testament. From Barashit at Chazon. There's only one testament, right? So the one testament, the one covenant, the one promise, the one contract that was broken, right? Broken by Adam, right? And the second Adam. Okay, the Jewish Bible. What is the Jewish Bible? I have a Jewish Bible called the Jewish Bible, by the way. But I mean, what are we talking about the Jewish Bible? I'm talking about Avda. I'm talking about Yashrael, right? So we're talking about the same thing. Once again, there's only one testament. What are you talking about? I mean, in a second, Minister Select. So I'm really trying to just see what I'm saying. How people will say this stuff and just say you're wrong on all levels. You're wrong about the Old Testament. You're wrong about this. Like, you don't even know what I believe. If you want to go on YouTube, we have a whole series called Having Been Led as We Believe, if you'd like to actually know what I believe. But you're saying I'm wrong and you have nothing. See what I'm saying? And that's why we said the name of this today is They Will Disrespect You. I don't think you even notice that you're disrespecting, but to come on and say that you have no respect for anything that I'm saying, because in essence, that's what you said. You said that you're wrong. Then I said, why am I wrong on so many levels? Then I said, well, what am I wrong about as far as what we talked about so far? And your whole thing was then to say, oh, you're wrong about Old Testament. We didn't even mention Old Testament today. Oh, okay. That's not what you typed. You said there's much wrong info. Okay, well, from what you typed, it definitely said, you're wrong. You said on many. I said, where was I wrong? I made it a point to say the words. I'm very good with words. So are you, right? You have this education and all these things you bring to the table. I made it a point to say I made a point to say, where am I wrong? What did I say that was wrong? Then I said I didn't even talk about the Old Testament. I spoke on that, and you responded to that. So you might have had a typo a couple times, but I don't know if you had a typo over and over again. Nevertheless, though, when we get to this, again, this is something where you got to comprehend, right? Like, there's nothing. So it's about being disrespect, right? Like, it's effective. Okay, that's fine. You can be a teacher and a professor since 1833. That's not the point. I asked a question as far as where was I wrong? And see, so when somebody says that, you got to understand, like, that's what we would call ad hominem. Ad hominem means that somebody's going to come on and they're basically going to tell you that you're wrong just because, right? And so that person, is blocked. We gave them a chance. They didn't really do well with the chance that they were given. So, you know, we'll pray for that person. But long story short, like, this is what we're dealing with, right? I wanted to show you that because they disrespect you, right? They disrespect you. He assumed that he was going to come on here and say that I don't know anything I'm talking about, right? And that I look a certain way. Here comes this guy saying he's Yashel, or here comes this guy saying, look, I'm Jewish and blah, blah. Jewish means you kind of sort of Jew. You're not even a Jew. You're Jewish. Like somebody might say that this is blue, but somebody else might say, somebody else might say this is bluish. But people are going to blatantly disrespect you because they can't accept you, because they can't accept your culture. They can't accept that you would know something they wouldn't know. And then here's the deal. When you challenge them, as you just saw, they can't tell you why the challenge is valid. Remember we talked, see how the 12 pillars of wisdom and all this stuff go together? Remember we talked about this, where some people would say, try the spirit by the spirit and challenge and this and that. Well, what are you challenging? What is the context that you're going to challenge? I don't mind you challenging, but don't challenge something just for the sake of saying I'm wrong. That's ad hominem. Ad hominem just means you're trying to make fun of me to win an argument, but you don't have anything to stand by. That usually shows me you have no argument in the first place. And somebody as educated as that person would have hopefully realized that they should have came with something better than just saying that I don't like you or I don't like your culture. That's not my problem. I love you even when you don't like me. Like, that person couldn't say hello. They couldn't say, but you got to comprehend, they're going to disrespect you. Mighty Lion says some strive better, some just strive for more. Stay positive, keep going. Bless up. Amen. Yeah, distraction and disrespect. You said you've been trying to find it in energy. I don't remember what we were talking about at that time. What were you saying? I'm sorry. Right. But you got to comprehend, right? How you doing, Henry? Yeah, disruptive with nothing of value to contribute. At least bring some facts, right? Don't blurt out nonsense, right? If your only fact is you wrong. But see, all this stuff goes together. Praise Yah. We were talking about IQ, intellectual quotient. He couldn't find an issue with what I was saying. He had a problem with my intellect. Now, I want you to understand, because intellect is intelligence, really. So it's not intellect quotient. I'm sorry, intelligence quotient, right? He had a problem with my intelligence. What does intel mean? Intelligence. What does intel mean? Intel means information. Oh, the green book? Oh, okay. You're talking about the green book that black people use to be able to go certain places, right? But you see what I'm saying? What is the intel? Intel means information. He didn't like the fact he couldn't find anything wrong with my information. He just didn't like the culture that the information came from, or she. Don't know if it was a he or she. Suffolk Man says the reason lies around the world, truth is getting out of bed is patience. Oh, okay. Thanks for being part of the community, Rochelle. How you doing? Barcia, how you doing? Thanks for being on. Right? And people don't recognize that, right? So he couldn't find, how you doing, Yizzy? He could not find, the person who was on here challenging, saying all this stuff. They could not find anything wrong with what I was saying. Right? They had a problem with where the intel came from. See, he didn't have a problem with the eteos, right? He had a problem with the etymos, right? Like we talked about in the 12 pillars of wisdom. The eteos would be eteology, right? So to speak. And it would be the study of what a word truly means. But etymology, etymos, means the study of where a word comes out of, the context. It's not just a fact, but what's the context it comes out of? Because you can't have proper interpretation without proper etymology. And so his beef was not with what I was saying. His beef was with me. See, had I been somebody that looked like him, had I been somebody who said, okay, I'll shave this off and I'll shave this off and I'll take this off and put on a suit and tie and I'll give you the same word. And maybe if I said it like this, because at least I'm not as I'm not as dangerous to him if I say it like this, because then at least, even though it's not his culture, he could at least say that I'm an overseer of that. But the second I said, I'm going to stand up in my culture and give you that information, he had a problem with it. They disrespect you. Moderators, we're going to be on it today. Yeah, right. I thank you for letting that be patient, but just recognize we're going to be on it today. I'm not saying we got to block everybody and stuff like that, but we're going to be on it today because people don't want to hear stuff like this because they are threatened by you. They disrespect you. When a white person was saying that black people, right? Hear me out. When a white person, when Christopher Columbus, when the Queen Isabel, when the Pope all said we're going to send people over to the land of Asheroth, nobody had a problem with that. But when Dr. Yvonne von Sertima, who took white research, by the way, and said the same thing, now all of a sudden everybody got a problem with it. Your Bible, matter of fact, maybe it's not your Bible, but in the Apocrypha, right? The Apocrypha is there. Thank you, Bounty. Appreciate it. In the Apocrypha, it has it tells you about the land of Asheroth as well. Where do you think they got that from? And they came with a Hebrew interpreter to speak to the Taino people. This was something that was known. That's why Christopher Columbus was sent. But when I say it, people will say all over the place, oh, why did you do that? Why you got to sprinkle lies? Why do you have to come up with these myths? No, I'm not coming up with myths. But when a white person said it, they sent a whole expedition to go and get us as slaves. They disrespect you when they disrespect your culture. They disrespect you when they disrespect your teachings. Now, our teachings must be based off of something that is contextually factual, right? But if your teachings are contextual facts and they disrespect it, then it's not you, it's not the information, it's you. That's why when we talk about the Most High and I bring up the Most High, somebody gets mad about it. It's not me you disrespecting. It's the culture, it's the kingdom, it's him. Right? That's why it says Matthew chapter 5, verses 10 through 12. Consider yourself blessed when men revile you and ridicule you and say all manner of evil against you for his name's sake, for his reputation. They did the same thing to the prophets that came before us. They did the same thing to they did the same to the prophet Moses. Heck, if you want to go recent, they did the same thing to Prophet Garvey. They did the same thing to Minister Malcolm X. They did the same thing to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he dared say that white people and black people should hold hands. But when your information, they don't have a problem with your information. They have a problem with the culture your information comes from. And so Pac-Man says patience of truth is needed, but it's used by bad actors to slow the spread of truth. This lesson is a blessing. Amen. Thank you. Thanks for sharing the live icon. The truth. Thanks. And by the way, thank you, Patreon family for being on and getting some more extra stuff and helping us in the community. We appreciate you. Crown not on tilt. Oh, okay. How you doing? Thanks for being part of the community. Indica Cat, all right, thanks for being part of the community. How you doing? Trauma Shaman. He said you got your finger on the button. You know, but these are the things we have to recognize. It's not the information they disrespect. They can't disrespect it. They have to disrespect you. That's ad hominem. I can't figure out. I'm just gonna say he's wrong. And then once he starts challenging me, oh wait a minute, I can't find. I didn't say. Then it's I got to find something you're wrong about. I didn't say that. I didn't say that so that you trap him in that. You give him stipulations, trap him in that. This is legal, right? Then well, I can't because they disrespect you. He said, well, I can't be what taught, learned, and stuck in that. Here to possibly change mindset. How to get hair like that? It just grows. It just grows. I can't tell you. I don't really have a formula. Thank you very much for the appreciation of the shirt. And thanks for the love. You said I also wanted to ask if you know a book called Historical and Cultural Atlas of African Americans. I don't know it because I haven't read it. I know of it. I know some excerpts of it, I think, but I don't. I haven't read it. I can't say that I've read it. Right. So, and hello, how you doing, Mr. Tracy B? So once again, the person came on and proved to us what I'm talking about. It's not your cult. It's not your information they have a problem with. It's where your information comes from. See, because you were first. Uh-oh. If we're coming from ancient civilization, I'm always looking for the original, right? We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. What does the word principality mean? Before we get into power and wicked, and wickedness and rulers of darkness or rulers of confusion and high powers and of wickedness and all this stuff like that. Before we get into that, the first thing it says is we wrestle not against flesh and blood. It's not against the human being that the problem is with. The problem that they have is against the origin. If I can tell you the origin, I can tell you what is. And if I can tell you what is, then I'm authorized more so than somebody else is. And that's where the problem is. You said, I never lived your life, but happy to hear truth. And thank you, Indica. Appreciate it. Right? Like, I'm not. Do you hear what I'm saying? If you can figure out the origin of something, then you can figure out what something is. And if you are authorized through origin, then you're authorized more than anybody else on the planet. Your melanin tells a story that other melanin doesn't tell. How you doing, Minister Tamara? What did I say? Your melanin tells a story that other melanin doesn't even tell. For example, your melanin says what? Your melanin has um, uh, selenium in the center of it. Someone else's melanin has sulfur at the center of it. Do you know sulfur is very tricky? Because sulfur is something, right, that it gets hot when you freeze it. And if somebody has sulfur in them, then they can be out in colder weather. Interesting. Do you know selenium attached to that melanin? Selenium is something that's going to help you as far as, um, things that are going to help you to think differently. And now put that together with some serotonin in your life and get that melatonin, which is just melanin anyways, in your life. And you got something going on. Even your DNA tells a story, but they disrespect you. They have to disrespect your culture and disrespect where you come from, right? And then while disrespecting it, they will change it. This is very Greco-Roman. This is very romantic, romanticized. That's why people like romantic novels, because romantic novels can take some very strange relationship type behavior, but change it into whatever you want to make it something that says people should go together. Romanticism makes us say that Owen Wilson and Jennifer, what's her name? Jenny from the Block, whatever her name is, this, Latina girl. At least they call themselves that now because somebody told them to call themselves Latino or Latina, or now some people trying to say Latine. But they taught, they'll put that in front of you and say that's the relationship you're looking for. What in the world? Like, these people can't even hold relationships, right? But you have, when you watch a movie, it's called suspension of disbelief. I'm sorry, you said I'm confused. So if one tries to adopt culture without acknowledging the origins, then where can the, I'm sorry, I missed the rest of it. Then where can the solution be? Oh yeah, right. But people do that all the time. Matter of fact, if you're going to talk about, like, I was watching something this rising, talking to my wife about Greek mythology today, and we were watching something on, the Disney movie Hercules, and his name is actually Heracles. But when the Romans took over the Greeks, they changed everything and tried to adopt it as theirs, which, by the way, that happened in Kemet. People don't know that Cush came first, and then Kemet took over, and then Kemet erased everything that Cush put out and said that it belonged to them. And so everybody who keeps saying Kemet is the mother of everything, Kemet this, Kemet that, man, Kemet wouldn't be what it is without Cush. And Kush wouldn't be what it is without Ham. His name meaning hot, where people try to say that's where Africa came from. That's we don't understand. It's a cultural thing. When your children are watching the cartoons they watch today, they're watching culture, right? You're authorized. Even the word sham. This is why they want you to say Semitic. They're anti-Semitic, but I'm not anti-Semitic. First of all, second of all, it's not even Sim. It's Shim. It's Sham. Get it correct, because the word Sham or Shim, it means name. The word name means authority, which means that if you come out of Shim, you are authorized. There's a reason why you're authorized. There's a calling that's on your life. Thank you, Sister Betty. Jennifer Lopez. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. How you doing, Jay Sway? People always stealing. Yeah. Salah, right? You're authorized. How you doing, Shakuni? Oh, hey. How you doing? That's Sister Streets. How you doing? Right? You authorized. You're authorized. You are authorized. You have authority. All right, we appreciate it, Icon Reed. Have a great day. Now, you have authority. You are authorized. Why is it that somebody dare tell you that you're not authorized? Why is it that somebody tries to tell you your culture doesn't matter? Why is it that as soon as you open your mouth, now all of a sudden you're the person that's been wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong? It's because they realize you're authorized to say some things that others aren't authorized to talk about. There's DNA memory. They admit there's DNA memory. So when I read something on a page, it speaks to me different in my mind. Somebody says, how did you get that? And how did you get that? Because I've authorized even from where I come from. Look, you can do, and the disrespect is crazy, but I don't care how you disrespect. Look, the child. Hear what I'm about to tell you. The child can be in a position, right? The child can be in a position to where, um, let's say for whatever reason you have a child and that child disowns you. That child says, "I don't want anything to do with them. That ain't my daddy." Blah blah, whatever. Well, guess what, boy? You can't ever take away what authorizes you. You might not like where your authority comes from, but you better learn where it comes from. I'm not saying you got to pick up on any generational curses, but you better learn where it comes from. Because I'll be the pappy, right? The paterfamilias, if you will, right? And so I be the pappy, I be the daddy, I be the father. And no matter how you like it or not, you can cut your head off, cut all your hair off your head and shave yourself bald all day, every day. But if you ever slip up and let that hair grow, it's gonna tell people where you come from. And you can shave that beard all you want, but if you ever should grow it out, it's gonna tell people where you come from. And you can try to bleach your skin all you want, but if somebody ever gets a picture of what you used to look like, and you can try to do whatever you want, but that nose is gonna say, "Oh, that's Kofi right there, and that's Kofi's daddy, and that's Kofi's granddaddy." And people are trying their best to get you to shave off and remove and do all this stuff, and they try to attack it so that you'll say, "Oh, I'll get rid of this." No, like who I am, my culture has to show up in order to tell the story, right? We're so busy in his story, but it's got to tell the story. It's got to tell the story. You said, who comes before Shem? Shem, you going back to Noah. And by the way, that's something that African tribes actually uphold. That's something that Chinese tribes actually uphold. Something that Japanese tribes actually uphold. Right? We just don't know it because somebody hid it so much. Yeah, you are enough in your culture. Matter of fact, you're more than enough because your culture can't be without you. Yeah, we can't hide it. And the goal is to get you to hide it. To get you to hide it and to be ashamed and to remain scattered. Because if you would ever come together and say that you matter and that we refuse the disrespect. My wife said she used to want to eliminate her heritage, but now she loves it. Yeah, and that's most of our story. A lot of black people grew up wanting to be white, like straight facts. If you didn't want white skin, you definitely wanted what? White hair. And when we said we got to protect the style, now look, we know that African people and that Kemetic people, before they even knew about white people, that they, or what we call considered to be white by social construct, we know that they had, you know, you know, irons that they would heat up, just like you would heat up that I'm sorry, iron combs that you would heat up that hot comb. They had hot combs back then, and they would straighten their hair, and they did certain stuff like that, right? But isn't it interesting that our protective hairstyles we always go to are usually going to be from some to make sure we look like somebody else? It's not even natural. But we want so bad to have a protective hairstyle that doesn't look like us. Now, it doesn't mean black people can't have blonde hair. Look at the Aboriginals. Look at a lot of Aboriginals of Australia. Look at some Aboriginals of Africa. Look at some Aboriginals of South America. We know that you can have blonde hair. We know you can have blue eyes. We know those things can happen. It's not just because you're white. You said not you. You always. Oh, okay. But a lot of people did. Dawn said, I watched the live last night with children. Didn't get the message because we didn't get the messages because we talked about your hair. They love it. It said it looks like a tree. I'm on. And I've actually done some I think on Patreon we have a video where I'm standing underneath trees and I start comparing my hair to the trees. Most definitely. Because this is natural nature. You said you had a white coworker ask if you would straighten your hair. You told her you never see that. So all the women want long straight hair. A lot of them, not all, but a lot of them do. You said don't disrespect the wrong things. Hmm. If the people in America stand together in this love, it would change the world's thinking. Yeah, well, the love is action, and so if people had certain actions, yeah, and the actions spread across the diasporas. Your actions go past white or black, right? But people won't even listen to your actions if they can't accept your culture, and that's the issue. They'll disrespect you because they disrespect your culture. The second you disrespect somebody's culture and say, "I'm not even going to let it come to the table," there is no point. It doesn't matter how much you like somebody if you can't love somebody. See, a lot of people get in relationships, they really like each other. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, life coaching, marital coaching. A lot of people really love each other. I mean, I'm sorry, really like each other, but the love, you know. How you doing, Chef? Thanks for being on. Right, a lot of people really like each other, but love, maybe not so much. You know, because love is action. Learning somebody's love language is action. Learning to accept the way somebody is action. Being willing to die for somebody, that's action. They used to disrespect is rampant in the workplace where you can't wear your natural hair. Right. And that's why you have to get to a place where you can have an environment where you can be the person who sets the tone. Right. You have to be in an environment where you set the tone. Right. You have to be in an environment where you set the tone. You said same disrespect when they don't say your name properly. Yeah. Oh, I can't say your name. We'll just call you K.O. I can't say Kofi Ofori. Well, no, you're not going to call me K.O. But what's the problem? Then they go to HR and HR says, why do you have a problem? Why do I have a problem? My name is not being said correctly. Why do you have a problem learning my name? Well, his name is easy. You know, his name is Jim. Okay, but the only reason it's easy to you is because going back to that IQ, that's the intelligence you have. But where I come from, we have a different set of intelligence. You said you wear your apps on all white settings. They love it. Or your afro on all white settings. Or in all white settings. You know, a lot of people do. And that's great that you found everybody loves it, you know, but you got to get to a place where you love yourself and your culture has to be presentable. You know, it's interesting. I won't say the person by name, but somebody who's in our community. One of the first conversations we really had was they were like, hey, I need to talk to you about something, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, cool. And we had a conversation. The conversation was basically just that, you know, they said shalom in a conference call, something like that. And somebody didn't like the fact that they said shalom. And so all these people who would say assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, all these people that were comfortable with each other saying, God bless you, people saying Merry Christmas, this and that or whatever. All of a sudden, a sister said shalom, and they lost their mind. And HR had to take place and say this and that or whatever, because they brought their culture to the place. When the original showed up, now we got a problem. It's not the information, it's not the intel. It's where the intel came from. Yeah, basically, you know, somebody would be like, oh, you know, well, it's easy to say Michelle. I mean, if it's easy to say Michelle, why is it hard to, you know, or somebody be like, it's easy. Here's a better one. It's easy to say Amy. Well, then if you can say Amy, why can't you say Amma? Well, Amma, you know, that's a little no. What you're saying is it's where the intel comes from. You're okay with Amanda, so you can't say Emma and then turn it into Amma. You can't do that. You know, but it's where the intel comes from. They have a problem with what the person or the vessel given the intel looks like. Yeah, people fear what they don't understand, and that goes deeper than what we're even talking about. You said, forgive me, Pastor, if that was offensive about the line. I must have missed the comment. So no need to apologize. Right. You know, but people don't like where the information comes from. They don't have a problem with the intelligence. They have a problem with where it comes from, as the person proved earlier today, whatever their name was, Fifth Element or whoever they were, right? They proved you're wrong. You're this. I don't like you. You're wrong about Old Testament. It's like, we weren't even talking about that today. What are you talking about? Right? But they got to find something. Then it's like, well, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me the context is wrong. Tell me the facts is wrong. They can't do it because that wasn't their intent. Their intent wasn't to say that the information is wrong. Their intent is that you're attaching the information to the original. And that's a problem, because if we attach the information to where it originally came from, that means you have power. If we stop saying that chemistry is just something that some guy in a lab came up with randomly, and we say that chemistry actually comes from chemistry, which means that you can't study your chemistry without studying chemet, then we have a problem. If we admit that, if we admit that, then we got a problem. So we can't say that. And if you dare say that, somebody's gonna come up, you're wrong, you're wrong. The reason they'll say you're wrong is because how dare you connect the story and disconnect it from his story? How dare you connect the story to its origin and stop connecting it to his story? That's all his story is. His story is a cultural misappropriation. His story says, I'm going to take this story and I'm going to attach it to myself rather than attach it to where it comes from. And anybody that tells me it's not attached to me, I'm going to tell you why it should be disrespected. Once again, they're not disrespecting your information. They could care less about the information. They care about the fact that you're connecting it to yourself. Go on YouTube. There's tons of information out there. And there's tons of information that says the same thing that we say, right? But when a white person says it, it's fine. When a black person, when Kofi says it, they take down his YouTube channel. The World Health Organization did that. Told YouTube, you will take down his stuff. Why? Because he's attaching this thing to his people. Amen. Sister Deborah says our intellect is scary to them. You say it's funny to you how they try to redirect our path. Yeah. Right. When we put this thing to the story or our story, it becomes a problem, because the story, is vastly different than his story. Right. When they try to take his story, right, and when I take his story and I say there's fallacies in there, the only thing they can do, you'll see this happen all the time. They never really attack the intel. If somebody attacked the intel, I actually would have way less problem, even though it would still be disrespectful. Thank you, Dollar Bill, for being part of the community. It would still be disrespectful, but I could have a better conversation about that, because hey, at least we're talking about the information. But when you're saying the information is automatically wrong, the context is automatically wrong, and you can't tell me why, it's because you're upset with the fact that I'm telling you it's not his story. It's not yours anymore. It's all of ours. Right. And to be all of ours, it can't be my story or your story or his story. It has to be the story. There's only one interpretation, many applications, but only one interpretation. Right. Thank you for that, Jay. Right. There's only one application. There's only one application. I'm sorry, excuse me. Only one interpretation. There's only one interpretation. And people are living in, yes, cognitive dissonance. They have to, though. And the goal is to get you to believe that cognitive dissonance is actually more vital, that cognitive dissonance has more value than actual contextual facts. Right? That's the goal, is to get you and I to believe that to be in cognitive dissonance, to have two realities that are against each other in our own mind, is better than to have one reality. People are so busy trying to tell you about multiple universes and don't comprehend that a universe literally means that a verse, spoken sentence. So the universe is a single spoken sentence. So if we're going to talk about universal law, then we got to go to the one who spoke the sentence into existence. All the sentences that you speak, that you're talking about, are other universes. They don't matter if they don't come out of the universe. Stop talking about that you create your own universe, but you're not faithful to the universal law. You see that? But what I'm saying makes complete sense, but because I'm the one saying it, that's the problem. You hear what I'm saying? People see me and they see this, they see the culture. Just like if you go, and they say you're wrong. But see, it's weird. I'm sorry. Sister Tracy said it's a text, limited characters, context, hard, understanding. Don't know that person. I mean, I guess, I don't know. Are you saying that like we're not giving people enough chance to be able to speak? I'm not sure. But I do know that when I give people a chance over and over and over again to be able to say something, and they're wrong or whatever, like they straight up are lying in what they said, I think we have an issue with that, but so when we're dealing with somebody like who was on today and he keeps saying something's wrong, 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 and then all of a sudden when he gets called out on it, then he lies about what he typed up himself, then I would just say that, yeah, that person's a liar. I don't think I'm misrepresenting him at that point, you know. But when we're talking about this stuff, we have to get to a position where we comprehend that people just don't like where it comes from. I'm not saying every single person, but let's be honest. If you're somebody that will use ad hominem, once again, that means I'm going to make fun of you because I can't find anything that's actually an argument worthy of discussion. Then if that's all you got, then what are we to do with that? What culturally is great with that? What are you doing that's providing people any hope with that? Or are you just making fun of somebody? We might as well be playing the dozens. Even stuff that other people make fun of. One of the reasons, and I don't do that. I don't really do the dozens, right? I used to. I used to actually be pretty decent at it. But I don't really do the dozens anymore. Right, but the dozens, even a lot of people don't know the dozens came out, or joning, or making fun of somebody, etc. Mama jokes, all that stuff. It came out of chattel slavery. People don't even know that's cultural. So there's a reason why, even if others do it, I don't necessarily come at them because I know where it came from. I know why people did it, and therefore I know why people do it today. The reason why the dozens came into existence is because that you had people that were taken from where they were, and they were told that they were nothing. They were disrespected. They disrespect you, right? And so what they did was they said, man, you know what? White people are going to come over, these masters and slave owners, because the slave master, slave owner are not always one and the same. Nevertheless, the slave masters and the slave owners, they were going to, and the overseers and all this, they were going to say some wild, and even the people with that Sambo spirit were going to say some wild and wicked stuff to you. And you might actually come into your humanity, because we have this weird belief that all slaves just did whatever the master said. A lot of slaves were ready to fight. There's a lot more slave rebellions than what you know about, right? These were prisoners of war. These were warriors that were caught up in there, and they were descendants of warriors. Some of them lost their mind, sure. They went to that whole Sambo thing full tilt, but a lot of them were ready to fight at all times. And so to make sure that people could live and not die, because they were going to be called the N-word, and they were going to be disrespected, and they were going to be told they weren't even human, and they were going to have their children sold into slavery and all types of stuff. And people were going to say wild stuff to them at all times. So to help them to stay alive, they came up with the dozens. They would make fun of each other, and they would make fun of each other at such a level that it was something that was even worse than anything they'd hear from the master. They would get used to, and they would try to win, and they would get used to hearing each other say this even from childhood, that by the time they got to be adults and the master would say it to us, it would roll off our back, and we keep it moving. We knew it was wrong, we knew it was bad, we wanted to be able to put our hands on them, but we said, you know what, we practiced for this. It was war, it was a war tactic. Yet you'll have people that'll come out, say slavery was a choice, I would have jumped off the ship if it was me, blah blah. I'm glad that they didn't jump off the ship. I'm glad that they learned how to live through it and give us a chance to get ourselves together, so that now that we have a chance to eradicate these generational curses, we're in position to be able to do so. You said you can tell from the intellectual burns that I had some petty fire back in the day. Oh yeah, I could be petty with the best of them back in the day. Most deaf. How you doing, Kings of Queens? Okay, how you doing? Love G says, in order to even make up your own universal law, it would have to be based on / bounce off the true universe. Well, it has to come out of it. Universal law protects rights, so law will protect the rights of the universe. So if you're going to do something within the universe, you have to do something within the law, right? But others will disrespect you, not because it's your information, your intel, your intellect is bad. They will disrespect you because your intellect comes from you. That's all it is. You said, where did I read that? You want to add that book to your collection? I don't remember. You could probably Google it, though. I'm trying to remember where you could even Google it from. I don't remember. I came across that like very randomly one day, somewhat recently, matter of fact, because I remember just sharing it with my wife. I'm not sure, though, where I read that. But, feel free to study it. Like I said, don't just believe it because I say it. Study it, of course. But yeah, this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a whole, and now you're dealing with a whole generation that's coming after generations where people legit were taught to disrespect you and disrespect yourself. Woman to call herself the B word because she's been taught that it's more respectful to call herself the B word than it is to be a black woman. Isn't that something? I don't think it was from Dr. Cloud Anderson. I don't believe it was from him. But these are things that are disrespectful. They disrespect you. And we don't fight. And see, watch this. Here's the thing about this stuff. We don't fight for us. We fight for them. Malcolm X said it where he said, man, when they told you to go and fight in Europe, you bled, right? When they told you to go and fight in Korea, you bled. He said, but when it comes to little black boys when it comes to black people having dogs sick on them, your women and your little black girls being bombed in churches, he said, you haven't got no blood, right? We're so okay with disrespect. We're so okay with disrespect of ourselves that we will disrespect ourselves and we'll allow somebody to disrespect us. Now, you got to be aware. If you got children to take care of or whatever, maybe the most you can do. If you're the only woman there and there's a bunch of cops that are beating up some brothers and saying, I'm not saying sister jump in there or whatever, but bruh, if I'm around and there's one police officer, right, and there's 25 of us, that we better not be, maybe one person needs to hold the phone to make sure that they can put it online and we can prove what actually happened and we can have something saved to be able to bring in front of the judge's evidence and make sure it gets all over the news. Outside of that, we need to be on that police officer's you know what and beating the brakes off him, right? And we have the right to be able to do so if we definitely see that he's breaking the law. Because comprehend, he's a public servant. There comes a certain point, at some point, I'm not saying go out there and just start beating the brakes off of everybody, right? But I'm saying be honorable. It's okay when a mother protects her children. It's okay when a father protects his children. It's okay when a husband protects his wife. It's okay if I'm not going to let you dog somebody else. It's all right. I've had this happen to me before where I see somebody pull over somebody, it looks wild what they're doing. There's like 3-4 police cars there or whatever. And I go to the right place. I might go 50 yards away and zoom in. And some police officer sees that I'm recording. And all of a sudden, hey, what you doing? They try to drive over me. You can't do nothing to me. I'm not in your jurisdiction. They try to scare me, try to get on there. Hey, I got a situation. Somebody's recording this. I need you to come up. So what? But we're so okay with the disrespect that we'll just go ahead and have and run away scared or whatever. No. And that's really what they're afraid of is that when you start talking your culture, when you start talking your intellect, when you start speaking for your people, you know what starts happening? They start getting scared because they realize, wait a minute, they're not that far from running up on us. They had to make a law because they said, wait a minute, people are willing to stand there. If you willing to stand there, you ain't too far from putting your hands on me. Police officers got scared. Slave patrolmen got scared. They said, hey, you need to put some laws in place. What do laws do? Laws protect rights. You need to protect our right to beat the brakes off people. That's what they did. That's what they did because we don't know law. We don't comprehend what you scared them when you started recording. And you scared them when you started getting closer with that recording. And you scared them so much that when they went and on purpose killed George Floyd because they knew who George Floyd was. And you scared them so much that he said, hey, I need backup. Give me 3 police officers ready to go with weapons. Right? You scared them so much because they recognize you ready to come up on them. You scared them so much that they're trying to change laws because they had a little boy go ahead and shoot some people in the head. And everybody worships him now. And now people are looking for this little boy. So they had to change some laws to protect the little boys that are going to do the same thing in the future because they got to keep up the white supremacy piece. Not even realizing that they ain't even real white people because the real white people are the people you can't see. That's what the word white actually means. But the greatest trick of the devil is to make people, believe that he never existed. How you doing, 713? And say, could it be that don't fight because they're afraid of what would happen to them? I mean, sure, that's part of it. But see, watch this. Some of the people that record some of the stuff, they fought in the United States military. Were they afraid to fight there? Possibly, but they fought anyways. Some of those people that say I'm afraid to fight them are people that if you disrespect them or step on their shoe, they'll fight you. It's not necessarily about being afraid to fight. It's about, oh, we're okay with the disrespect. That's just what happens. You know, black people that get beat up by the police to protect their right to murder, to keep people in their place. Mm-hmm. No, they saying side to side on block recording. Mm-hmm. How do you be qualified immunity? Well, once again, you know the law. And how you doing? I'm sorry, I know I'm gonna say this wrong. Is it Pararame? I'm not sure if I said that correctly or not. Thanks for being on. You know, but once again, we don't know the law. Once again, if a police officer is doing something or whatever, number one, you know, be smart. I'm not saying just use this to your detriment, right? But be smart. You don't have to talk to a police officer. You don't have to tell a police officer. First of all, you shouldn't tell a police officer you're driving anywhere unless you're actually at work, driving for a company and driving a company vehicle and getting paid while doing so. You're not even driving, you're traveling. Use the correct language. You know, when you get your driver's license, you know, you can always get a new driver's license and tell them that you want a new driver's license with a new signature on it and demand it. And make sure that you put on that driver's license. You put on there without prejudice above your signature in quotation marks, and you put underneath it UCC 1-308. When that police officer does something and you show them and you teach them, remember, you're the master. That's why we tell people who take sovereignty 1 and sovereignty 2 with us, you are the master. They are the public servants. Treat them as such. Don't disrespect. Be honorable, right? When you are in a leadership position of an environment, wherever your feet tread, it is your environment. You have the right to have leadership over your own environment, but teach those who might not know what needs to happen with you culturally, because they don't know their own culture. Bottom line, like, you would be amazed how many police officers. You would be shocked by how many police officers don't know that they come from slave patrolmen. You would be amazed how many people don't know that the prison, the pipeline system started in England and don't know any better. You would be amazed that it was the prisoners of that prison to pipeline system. See, America itself is nothing but prison to pipeline system. England sent the trash over here. You call them Puritans now because you don't know any better. But they sent the ones that they literally couldn't afford. They had so many people they were killing at one point in England and genocide, and people that were killing children that were stealing cups and that were pickpockets. There are children that were 7 years old that basically they couldn't really hang them correctly because these 7-year-olds basically were too small to be able to stand on the stools and stuff. So they had to go and get higher things to put the 7-year-olds on to hang them. Like, this is a prison to pipeline system. They had too many people they were killing, so they just sent a whole bunch of them over to Australia and over to India and over to America and over to South America and over to the Caribbean. That's where you get it from. You when you're looking at pirates and piracy and stuff, all it is just prison to pipeline. See, we only think of it as black and white. They're focusing on black a lot, but don't get it twisted. This thing is part of their story. That's part of his story, but they don't tell you that. They don't teach you his story. They tell you, it's amazing. They will tell you, we're going to teach you history, and they don't tell you his story. Right. And you said, look at what happens when we don't fight. Right. And one of the greatest things that we could do is to fight, first of all, legally, lawfully. Get your own land together. That's why we keep working on this land. And our goal is in October. Even if we don't live there yet, our goal in October is to be able to say, look at this deed. Boom, this is ours. You said new fictitious laws made up every day, especially if we're dealing with that, you know, the straw man. Most that. Type the UCC I just mentioned. It's UCC 1-308. UCC space 1-308. It actually comes from UCC. Originally, it was UCC 1-207. So UCC 1-308 or UCC 1-207. But you're dealing with police officers, they don't know law. That's why you got to comprehend you're the master, they're the servant. What does the Bible say? The servant is never greater than his master. If you're the master, you got to be able to teach. Revelation chapter 3, verse 9. Israel, be ready to teach. These people are supposed to sit at your feet, but you think that you sit at their feet, and you end up sitting at their feet because you don't know. Don't fight because they wrongly think it doesn't affect them. Not my problem. That's part of it too. And said you camping out before your house is built. Thanks for being part of the community. I like that. Naturally me. Okay, cool. I've never seen anything like that. I like that. How you doing? Y'all ain't tired yet. Destroyed for lack of knowledge, right? So and intimacy. Knowledge is intimacy. Are you intimate enough with this to teach it? They're going to disrespect you based off of the fact that they believe that you don't have any respect for you because they taught you to disrespect yourself. Malcolm X said this as well. Who taught you? When they were trying to say Elijah Muhammad was the one that was racist, he said, who taught you to hate your nose? He said, who taught you to not want your own hair? And I'm just quoting him. I'm not saying that I actually agree with this, blah, blah, but I'm saying I'm quoting him now. He said, who taught you to want that dog-like hair? Or that dog-shaped nose? This is what he said, right? But he was trying to get you to comprehend. Who taught you to hate yourself? Was it yourself? This is the thing that happens with depression all the time, but this is this whole victor-victim thing that they talk about. This whole victor-victim thing that they talk about. You got to be a victor or a victim, and there's no in between. Like, if you know where a victor comes from, victors, they change and they lie about the story. Can I give you something? This is something that you know, but you don't really think about. It's something that you are aware of, and maybe you don't know, rather. Maybe you're not intimate with it, but you have an awareness of this. Nobody who ever goes through depression is depressed because of themselves. There's going to be a psychologist out there ready to say how wrong I am on that, but that's okay. I want the smoke on this one, right? Nobody who has ever been depressed in the history of depression, I'm going to go that far to say that there's not one person that has ever been depressed because of strictly only what has happened within themselves. Nobody. All right? Nobody has ever gone through depression because of just what's only happened within themselves. Something on the outside of you had to be spoken to you, or something that on the outside of you had to see, or something on the outside you had to hear or feel to make you get into a position to where you would doubt who you are. Not one person who has ever been depressed is depressed because of what started on the inside. Now, once you are depressed, are you dealing with what's on the inside? Sure. But that's not what I'm talking about. Not one person who is depressed has ever been depressed because it started intrinsically, because there's no such thing as anybody who's ever lived in a vacuum. If you were in the vacuum of space, right? For those that believe space is a vacuum and believe that there's no such thing as, oxygen and all this stuff, even though fire and everything can be in space, whatever, right? But if you're somebody who believes in the vacuum of space, then you believe that there's no oxygen, you believe that there's no gravity, really, right? Space is just out there. Matter of fact, you believe in dark matter. Dark matter, if you even believe in such things, dark matter is really just melanin. So there's nobody who has ever lived and been in a vacuum. You know why? Because you started off inside, and forgive me for being rude if you consider this to be rude, if you have little babies. I'm not going to curse, but some people, I'm going to talk about sexual organs. So I don't know if some people are there now. So if you want to take them away or close their ears, but I promise us, I believe it'll be fine. But everybody raises their own children. So I think I've given you enough chance now to remove them if you want. You started off inside somebody's testicle. You are the DNA. You have DNA memory. You started off inside a woman where her eggs were at, and then went into her womb. Your very existence means that you learned how to feel. Watch this. When you were in the womb, you already learned anger. That's why you got to be careful how you treat your lady. Make sure that she's not getting angry on some nonsense. If she's getting angry just because her hormones are in different places, that's fine. Right? But that's righteous anger. That's something that's just going to happen because of the law. It's natural law. But if she getting angry because you causing frustration and foolishness and stuff, well, then that's a problem. Right? That's a big problem. Right? But your baby is learning anger in the womb. Your baby didn't learn anger just because they were 2 years old. Somebody told you there's such thing as terrible twos, and so you think that terrible. By the way, terrible means awesome anyway, so I don't even know why to use that word. All right, like the word dinosaur means terrible lizard. Terrible just means awesome, big, awe, something awe that leaves you in awe, right? But nevertheless, when you get to this terrible two phase, they didn't learn anger then. Your baby had five senses in the womb, and when the mother got angry, the baby saw anger. It saw, oh, this is what anger looks like inside. It saw sparks sometimes, even things that might be like sparks, or it saw cells or different things like that move. It saw anger. The baby tasted anger when it was eating from the mother, connected to the mother, and the mother was eating and she was eating in anger. The baby said, ooh, this is what anger tastes like. I don't know if I like this food or not, right? Felt endorphins rush. The baby felt anger because it could feel. The baby smelt anger. Yes, the babies can even have a sense of smell, right? The baby heard anger when she got in an argument with somebody. There's nobody that was created in a vacuum. There's no problem that was created in a vacuum. There's no depression that was created in a vacuum. And I'm saying things that make complete and utter sense, but people don't like what is being said, not because it's not contextual, not because it's factual, not because it's historical. It's because it's not historical. It doesn't match what somebody else would say. If somebody who didn't look like me told you the same thing, you wouldn't have a problem with it. But because somebody who looks like me would dare say I'm the authority on it, now you got a problem. Where's your book on it? Before there were books, my people spoke on this. Where's your proof that you know about brain surgery? Before you existed, 4,000 years before Christ even, my people were already doing brain surgery. What are you talking about? But no, so-and-so is the father of medicine. No, Imhotep is the father of medicine. Well, we're getting back to natural medicine. Natural medicines existed before you even thought about natural medicine because natural medicine is nature, natural law. Animals knew about natural medicine. You're not impressing me because now you finally decided to stop giving people chemical versions of plants that cause side effects because you only focus on one part of the actual composition of said plant instead of making sure they get the wholly or holistic plants. That's not surprising me. You don't get extra credit because you now are starting to get to what we've been saying for thousands of years. Yeah, kind of, yeah, exactly. They say, where are your degrees? How many do you have? It's like, I taught a lot of people who got the degrees. I taught a lot of people who are in the military today making your decisions. I taught a lot of people that represent you. You want to talk about that stuff. Like that is my degree. I walked with the 3 stars and the 4 stars. I learned from I was the one that told them they couldn't do certain things, and I was nothing more than an E4. I'm talking about I was talking to let me get myself together with O nines, O tens, whatever it is. Right? Well, let's see what you got the 2, 3. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, actually, yes. But they don't exactly. We're not even supposed to question it, but it's because it's who you are. It's not because of what you say. Your intelligence is right. Your intel, your information is correct. They just don't like that it comes from you and that you would dare say that it comes from your people. They disrespect you. They disrespect you. I don't, color doesn't matter to me. Yes, it does, because if a white man and a white girl had a a white man or white husband and a white wife had a child, and I was there in the delivery room, and the white wife gave birth and the baby was half black, color would matter. Stop saying color doesn't matter. Color is part of your culture. It's part of the story of your children. If your child came up, you have a problem if that child was not part of your culture because it was a violation of the natural law. I'm not saying you hate the child because they're black. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you would hate the fact that the child did not come from you and there was a breach in contract with you and your wife. You hear what I'm saying? But people get upset when we simply say truth. Thank you, babe. Appreciate it. Right? And his story tries to make laws to keep us from what comes from our culture. This is what the problem is. I told you, I'm not even about critical race theory because theory is not fact. So I could care less about critical race theory. I want critical race facts. And by the way, if you look up the words, theory is theoretical, so it still has to come out of law. If you're being dishonest about law, then you can't teach a theory anyways. Number one. Number two, the middle one. I'm gonna work backwards. Number two, the middle one. So that's number three, actually, right? The theory. Number two is race. Race is a competition. So let's be honest about that. In capitalism, there is a competition. Why can't we start there? What's wrong with that? And then critical means to critique. So that's the first one. So put 1, 2, and 3 together. We're critiquing the competition in a theory based off of law that should protect human rights. Why does anybody have a problem with it? Because you have a problem not with the information. You have a problem with where the information comes from. Is it being new treason? I don't know if I'm saying that right. How you doing? I have military experience. Yes, I do. Facts. And noticing traits in my children that I'm trying to heal in me now. I passed it to them. Yeah. And a lot of us do. We pass this stuff on. We were taught. We had to be taught. I say this all the time. Supposed white people had to be taught they were white. And supposed white people had to be taught that things they didn't even agree with, which was black people were evil. And by the way, that goes back to the Crusades. Let's not be such Bible thumpers that we don't admit that people have been twisting this Bible so much, right? Now, it's not our culture in which they twisted it in. They did that in somebody else and try to put this on us. How you doing, Natar? Nicole. I've been calling you Natar. It's Nicole, isn't it? How you doing, Herbal Cafe? And thank you for being on with us. Oh, thank you, Sister Kimberly. Right, like this, it's cultural. They don't have a problem with the information. They have a problem where the information is coming from. You know why they don't have a problem with the information? Because the same people, well, I won't say the same. That's not necessarily so, right? Let me not make a blanket statement. Let me not be like everybody else. I'm on, right? But let's keep this 100. Don't wave a Confederate flag in front of me and then tell me that we shouldn't teach critical race theory. Like I said, I'm not about critical race theory. I'm about a critical race facts. But hey, let's just keep it 100. I'm not a Republican or Democrat. Could care less about that. But let's just see. I want you to see the hypocritical nature. Don't wave a Confederate flag in front of me and then tell me about critical race theory and how bad it is. Because you're saying it shouldn't be taught in schools so you can make sure that your children know facts. But that Confederate flag is not even the Confederate flag. Can I sit there? Let's sit there for a minute. Let's just sit here for a minute. We're gonna sit here for a minute, right? Until like the white couple at the sperm bank. That's recent, right? He said Jesus is Jesus character is a cult leader. Well, that's great. I'm glad that you're about that because first of all, I have no problem with you saying I'm in a cult because cult just means culture. So yeah, sure. Like this is my cult. Secondly, though, this is my cult, and this is my cult, and not the words that I use. You know, not Kofi. You know, that's my cult. Secondly, though, I'm glad that you think that it is because I don't worship Jesus either. Jesus is not Yahshua. Jesus is actually said in the Bible where that comes from. Yes, sis. And the word letter J didn't even exist in our language. So thank you. With you on that. Blank Cam is also, she said his story makes, oh, I'm sorry, I already read that. All right, so we're gonna sit. Forgive me, it's gonna take me a minute to catch up, but I just want to sit on this real quick. Man, I got caught up in that. I almost forgot what we were talking about. Somebody, what did I just say? Let's sit on this. Somebody help me. How you doing, Amber? Thanks for being part of the community. Oh man, I forgot where I was. Sometimes I get so excited about something I forget where I'm going. Somebody help me. Holy Spirit, help me. Bring this to my remembrance. Let's sit on this for a minute. Maybe it'll come back. Confederate flag. Thank you. Don't tell me about the Confederate flag. Wave a Confederate flag. Have a Confederate flag at your house. Tell me that it is your culture that you're trying to continue, and then have a conversation with me about critical race theory. All right, we're going to sit on this for a minute. You ready? Here we go. This is why. First of all, there is no such thing as the Confederacy. There's no such thing as the Confederacy. Can we start there? Can we mess some stuff up? Can we make sure people comprehend? See, they disrespect you so much that and they have to keep doing it by lying to you. They're so disrespectful that they don't even recognize that they're not even talking truth. Thanks for being part of Community Texas, right? Like, check this out. They have to lie to you. There's no such thing as a Confederacy. What do you mean? There's no such thing as a confederacy. The only confederacies worldwide that have ever been accepted are confederacies that are native to Turtle Island. In other words, if you're the original Americans, right? Look up what the original American is. Look up the definition of America in Black's Law Dictionary, right? If you look up what is the only confederacies that have ever been accepted worldwide, not just in the United States of America, worldwide, the only ones are native, indigenous people, the original Americans. If you look up that definition of an original American, they are copper-colored people indigenous to Turtle Island, or indigenous to even North America and South America. Those are the original Americans. If you are not a copper-colored person indigenous to Turtle Island or to North America and South America, or are a descendant of them in any way, shape, or form, right? You must understand that there is no confederacy, therefore you have no heritage. Now you have a Confederate heritage, but stop saying it's a Confederate because your Confederacy was a lie. Secondly, stop acting like you did something decent, because just like the people who were traitors to England that now make the United States Corporation tick, you were traitors to the Union. That was what you were. And hey, let's go off of your culture. To the victor goes the spoils. So if Americans get to say they have this rich history because they won against their own family and beat them up, then the Union gets to tell you that you lost too. Matter of fact, if you know what's really happened to you, you would get away from it and start trying to use your union rights, the union laws to protect your union rights. Because once they defeated you, they actually took your states, and when they accepted them back in, they not only did this to you, but also the other states, where they actually literally took away your rights as a state and said you could no longer be sovereign nations. Because the word state means country. You were sovereign countries that came together, and your governors were basically the presidents of your countries. And you had one president that was supposed to be over the union. So the United States of America is like NATO. There's 50 countries, there's 50 states that come together. Back then it was a lot less. And so if you really knew who you were, you would actually come up and say, hey, we want our sovereignty. And you would recognize that they would say, well, we really don't want to give you your sovereignty, because the reality is that the only way they could write that into the existence, the only way the Emancipation Proclamation could come into existence, the only way they could make things work out to that 13th and 14th Amendment citizenship that you got over you now, which allows you to be a chattel slave, to be in debt, to be attached to a birth certificate that's attached to a straw man, a fake person, like a straw man, in like a scarecrow that's there to scare away crows, but really isn't a real person. That's what they consider you, a straw man. Right? And that's where they make their money off of. There's no way you could be trillions of dollars in debt, tens of trillions of dollars in debt, and people still let you keep printing out money. They don't make their money off of that, because money's not even real. There's no gold or silver to back it up. Your labor is the money. You would start coming to them and saying, we want our states to be sovereign, and we want to be sovereign. But they would tell you, oh, well, the only reason we can't give that to you, technically, they'd have to start telling you the truth. Well, really, the only reason we could do all that stuff is because, the president, he made a declaration. The president, he came out, he wrote something. Donald Trump writes them out. Obama writes them out. Biden writes them out. And we get excited. They wrote this out. They wrote out this piece of paper. We don't recognize when they pull the piece of paper over and show it to you. Guess what they're showing you? They're showing you something that proves that you're still under martial law. You could not see. So instead of talking about waving the Confederate flag, you might want to figure out if you want to be under martial law anymore. See, the Confederacy, they got you so worked up that you believe that you're part of something that no country, you can't be sovereign. So the Confederacy was never sovereign because it was never recognized by one single country, including the Union it came from. It got close because people got tired of the fighting. They got close, but never did. Right? So you have to comprehend that you're under martial law, but you're so busy waving a flag. Now, here's another thing. What you call the Confederate flag is not even the Confederate flag. It's the Confederate Jack, if you will. But they got, do you hear what I'm saying? It's not even the Confederate flag. It's the Confederate Jack. It used to be in the corner Like you got the stars, the 50 stars that are in the corner, where you got the 13 stripes take up most of the flag, and then in the corner you got the jack, right? Well, it's the same thing. That was the jack that was in the corner. The flag looks different. Matter of fact, in some versions of the flag, the jack wasn't even there. So now, why is that important? Because the only times you've seen the jack come up has been when people who are making you look bad. If you say that you're not into racism and you're not into oppression, this and that, the only time the jack shows up is when people do some racist stuff. The only time them statues show up is when people do some racist stuff. Question for you. See, this is why people, you got to know the story. You got to stop letting them disrespect you so much that you can't even find respect in when somebody's being culturally accurate to you. True story, right? Let me ask a question. Some of y'all know this already. Hopefully some of you got the answer to this, but let me ask a question. Put it in the comment section for me. Let me know if you know what I'm talking about, right? How you doing, Mama Ro? How you doing? So question. Here we go. You ready? When do you think that the Confederate Jacks and all those Confederate statues were built? Give me a time frame. When do you think that they were built? Do you think they were built during the Civil War? Do you think they were built right after the Civil War? There's basically 2 or 3 times that these statues kept popping up. 3 times where these statues and these Confederate flags. All right, somebody said 1920s. That's hitting it right on the nail. Somebody said 1900. We're getting close. They were close with that, right? But there's 2 more I'm looking for. 1920s. I guess we could say 1920s through 1940s, but probably we're like 1920s, 30s. But yeah, pretty close. But I'm looking for a couple others. Right? 1920s, 1930s. We'll even say 1920s through 40s. Let's make that one group. We're looking for 2 other periods of time. In the 60s and 70s. Amen. Big Brother Thomas and Dennis said the 60s, 70s. Herbal said sometimes some of them in 76. We can even go 76 and 60s and 70s. But then there's one other time we missing. How you doing, Vonda Don? Thanks for being part of the community. There's one other time we still missing. So we don't want to tell truth. Tell the truth. Shame the devil. Right? We still missing one other time. I mean, some people, ministers like Sonia said, now probably they're fighting for him now. But I'm talking about when you saw a huge amount of them being built all over the place, not just in the South either. Like Malcolm X taught us, as long as you south of the Canadian border, you south. Stop talking about the South, right? But one more. See, in the late 1800s, 1880s, 1890s. Now, what do you think happened in all those time frames? Let's deal with the late 1800s. Why is it that they start building flags and they start waving Confederate jacks? Why is it that they start in the late 1800s, 1880s, 1890s? Why did they start building Confederate flags and Confederate jacks? And start building, Confederate jacks and building Confederate statues, excuse me. Why did they start doing that? The reason is very simple. There's a group called the Daughters of the Confederacy. And when you look up what they were doing during Reconstruction and everything, they felt they got a raw deal because their fathers were the slave owners. Their fathers were the slave masters. Their fathers were the overseers. Their fathers were the ones, and their brothers and their uncles, etc. And their sisters and their mothers were the ones that went out there to try and fight during this time of what they thought was oppression. Because if you look up why states left, the states tell you. You can look up why these states or countries left the Union in the first place. When Lincoln was about to get voted in, they started leaving. And you can look at what Jefferson Davis said. You can look up what General Lee said. You can look up what Stonewall Jackson says. You can continue to look up what all these people tell you. These states left because they said they're going to take away our states' rights to have slaves. They're trying to get capitalism to take place of chattel slavery, and we're fine without capitalism because capitalism means you have to have competition. Chattel slavery means that there is no competition. We don't want it. And that's, matter of fact, it didn't start. The war didn't start in 1860. It didn't start in 1861. It didn't start with the Kansas Wars in 1856. It started back when the Union became the Union and it went from territories to states or countries that were working together. Why? Because England was starting to talk about capitalism, and they were starting to get away from chattel slavery, and America was making too much money off of chattel slavery. That's been the fight since 1776 and before. They'll tell you it's about taxes and stuff like that. Do you think a whole group of people, especially poor people who are already having to pay taxes to the rich and stuff like that anyways, you think a whole bunch of people were mad because they had to pay taxes? Right? You think a whole bunch of people were upset because they had to pay taxes? Rich people, not normal people. And remember, it was 50-50. The British were fighting from some of the not just from everybody who was coming overseas. You had British people who were in the countries. You said was slavery based on race? Yeah. Chattel slavery was for the most part in the Americas, in the Caribbean, in India, in England, in Portugal, in Spain. We know it was based off of when the Pope sent Christopher Columbus over to get slaves. Remember, Queen Isabel has to ask the Pope permission to do anything. The Pope says, yeah, you can go over to the New World and look for the land of Asheroth, and the black people that are supposed to be out of people over there, go ahead and make them slaves, and we'll take the riches that they had. That's why they got sent in the first place. Did it start off based off of skin color only? No. But to say that it didn't, skin color never had anything to do with it, that would be theoretical, based off of no kind of fact, which means that if it's not based off of any natural law or universal law, then it can't even be a theory. Right? But they had to do that, right? So you have all these things that are going on. Right now, come back to the daughters of the not the daughters of the American Revolution, sorry, the daughters of the Confederacy. Their husbands, their fathers, their uncles, their brothers had died on the battlefield. Hear what I'm saying? They had died on the battlefield, and they were upset about it. They got together whatever money they could, and they did stuff, and they started changing history books. Kind of like we're not going to teach certain critical race theory or critical race fact. They came together and said, we're going to raise up money to teach our curriculum, to make sure that our children are aware of what we want them to learn. We're going to make sure that we start saying stuff like the South shall rise again. All of a sudden, people who were not even heroes become heroes because they survived. So they start finding people. And by the way, you can listen to some of these people talk and change their narrative, or read documentation. For example, Jefferson Davis gave a whole speech with his chest out, right? Gave a whole speech to Congress when he was still part of the Union and said, we are keeping states' rights to own slaves. We out here. Right? And dipped out and became the president of the Confederacy and loved slavery so much that General Lee, who people say he was unsure about slaves, this and that or whatever, he was torn, but he wanted to represent Virginia. Nonsense. Because he went into the Union, did damage. Any black person they found, even if they were free legally, they took them and wrapped them up, grabbed them, marched them all the way back into the South, and him and Jefferson Davis sold them to different people. But the daughters of the Confederacy got together and had this big old deal, came together and said, oh, well, it really wasn't about that. It was about slaves' rights, and let's put up people. And now Jefferson Davis, the same person who spoke in Congress and said, we're leaving because the fact that you won't allow us to keep slaves, which is they believe was their God-given right. That's what they said. Look up what Virginia says about why they're leaving. They said that, right? Look at what Mississippi says. Look at what South Carolina says. Some of these states went as far as to say that they believe that slavery was mutually beneficial to both the bond and the free. The bond is the slave. So the person, which wasn't even a person, don't get caught up in that thing where they tell you that we were considered to be 3/5 of a person. No, the 3/5 compromise happened before black people were even put into the 3/5 compromise. The 3/5 compromise said that whatever property you had, right, anything that you had that could be taxed, 3/5, 60% of the tax was going to go to southern states or southern countries, and 40% was going to go to the northern countries because the southern had more territory. All right. Then eventually the northern territory said, well, why aren't you taxing your black people? They said, well, y'all know that slaves aren't people. And they said, well, you got to tax them like people are taxing them something. right? 'Cause they were trying to get out of more taxes. They were like, y'all got more slaves than we do. We got a lot of slaves, but y'all got way more. You got way more territory. So they came up with a compromise. So in the compromise, what the South said is, look, we'll pay taxes on them, but we're not going to have pay taxes on them like they're people. We're going to pay taxes on them like they're property, because they're 0% people. We can treat them like their property and therefore pay 3/5 of the tax on them. So so the law never said you were 3/5 of a human being. The law said that you were 0%. But you learn in school, hey, they only consider you to be 3/5. And in your mind, what does that do? It relaxes you. Well, at least we were only 3/5. No, you were 0%. And still are. They never changed the law. And when somebody says, oh no, they have in the Constitution that this is wrong, blah, blah, go and look up in Black's Law Dictionary. Anybody that's considered to be Negro, colored, Black, African American, any of these things, they are not even considered to be real. They are considered to be artificial people. I'm doing well, Shelley. Thank you. And thanks for being on, right? We have all this stuff saved on YouTube. Look up hashtag find Kofi, hashtag FIND, then my name, KOFI. On any of our platforms, look it up on Facebook, and look it up on our podcast. Look up, wherever it is. Hashtag find Kofi. So see what I'm saying? That's what it is, right? But because they will deny you, they don't like the fact I'm giving you real information. You can look this stuff up, right? George Washington thought so little of you that his dentures were made out of your teeth. He didn't get ivory dentures till toward the end. You know how expensive ivory dentures are? He married his wife not because he respected his wife. You know why he married Martha? He married Martha because Martha had as many slaves as he did. Oh, yes, he did. He said that. I'm not even telling you what I think. I'm telling you like what he said. It was one of the things he loved about her. He loved that she had that property. She had that slaves. He made them with wood at one point, but guess what? The ones that he was doing with wood, it wasn't even the teeth were made of wood as much as part of the braces were made out of wood, and it wouldn't have made sense for him to have wood with splinters and everything. But he actually is on record talking about how he fairly would pull the teeth out of slaves, but he would at least give them, a tiny bit of money for them, so that they couldn't, they got problems with their teeth, but at least he'd be all right. His dentist talks about it. Now, remember, he had at least 5 sets of dentures. So I'm not saying every single denture was made out of slave teeth, right? But we know that there are dentures, at least 2 of the 5. Some would say 3 of the 5, at least, that we know had the slaves of, or the teeth of slaves. I'm not telling you anything that's wrong. You said, there's your tooth fairy, right? I'm not telling you anything that's wrong. I mean, maybe the one that he made for Paul Revere is like that. I'm just telling you what we know out of his mouth from documentation, from stuff his wife wasn't able to throw away after he died. When they showed up to get his body, his wife was throwing all his paperwork in the fire. Thank you, Flo, for being a part of the community. Okay, well, whatever. If you don't want to listen to what he said, what history says, the fact that history tells us there are 5 sets of teeth, and that there is actually one of the teeth that you can actually go see for yourself that has actual human slave teeth in it, right? But regardless, and all this stuff, right? If you want to go, go over to Virginia, go to his manor, and ask them, right? Ask them, did he have teeth that were made out of slave teeth? They'll tell you. They don't want to tell you. They're not going to put it in the little tour that they give you. But if you ask the tour guide, they got to tell you the truth. Just like if you go to see the Statue of Liberty, they got to tell you the truth. The Statue of Liberty, she has chains. If you ask, no, that's what's recorded. When they showed up to her house, she was throwing away papers into the fireplace. So there's a lot of stuff about George Washington we don't even know. Right. But what I'm right. And so once again, if you're talking about one set, see, that's where they get you, right? They say, we're going to disrespect what you said. We don't like what you're saying. So they say, see, this one thing of teeth right here, this was made out of this, or this one was made out of wood. But then there's a second one made out of ivory. So are you saying that one didn't exist? And that one's in the museum too. Well, you know what? Well, there's only those 2. No, there's in history, we have this conversation between him and his dentist. We know that there were 5 sets of dentures that they had. We know that he had issues with the first dentures because they didn't work that well. That's why if you look at a lot of his pictures, his mouth is kind of like this. If you look at some of George Washington's pictures, now they try on some of them to be slick, but if you look at a lot of his pictures, they actually give you this thing where you see his lips are in some because the dentures weren't working. He needed some real teeth or something that acted like real teeth. And so they thought, let's just go ahead and have some real teeth. You said just like anything, dentures evolve. Well, I don't get into evolution, but I'll say this much. People had teeth and things that they used before that, and they had dentures that were better than the ones that George Washington was using for many different cultures, including European people, and they didn't have to use human teeth. you know, I know that people did bone surgery and surgery on teeth and even screwing in gold into teeth and things like that well before it was something that was thought to be a gangster thing or a black thing. Right? Nevertheless, daughters of the Confederation. The daughters of the Confederation had it to where they started the argument. The South shall rise again. They started the argument. We need to make sure that we lift up these Southern generals. They started the argument. Hey, if our children don't know the fight that our fathers and our brothers went through, then they're not going to know their culture. They started the argument that we need to teach that Black people were actually treated with respect and as people rather than as property. That was in the 1890s. That's the first time you see the Confederate flag come out. That's when the Democrats, a former Democratic Party member and former president, comes out and helps to start the KKK. That's the first time you see the Confederate Jack, not the Confederate flag, but that thing you call the rebel flag. It wasn't the flag. Now, if it's a rebel flag, it's a rebellion against the Union and how you still want slaves. That's what they were fighting for. But if you don't want to come away from generational curses, you will fight for generational curses. You said they have photos and chains, and Dr. DeGroy got them to add it to the tour. Yeah, Dr. Joy DeGroy did, author of PTSS, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Yeah, most definitely. A lot of people don't know, but that's the Confederacy once again. So the Confederacy didn't even exist because it was never authorized, because in order to be a sovereign nation, another sovereign needs to recognize you. I'm not into Islam, no. I'm not Islam. I'm not a Christian. I am in the kingdom, though. So we know this. We know this. This is factual. I'm not even making anything up. We know this to be so. we know this to be so. Right. Then we go to the 1920s, 30s, 40s. We want to put whatever in there. You start seeing the flags and the stuff come back again. What's happening around that time? Who's bringing back the flag now? Who's building up the statues now? These statues, by the way, that are cheap, because the people that are putting them up don't even really have that much money. These statues are so cheap that when they pull them down nowadays, they break. If a statue's real, the statue ain't gonna break when it hits the ground. It's not gonna crumble. If a statue's real deal, especially you talking about real bronze, right? This is fake bronze. They're putting this stuff up real quick because it takes a long time to make a bronze statue. This isn't real bronze. They just carving something, putting some clay together, doing something, painting it in a certain color, and trying to make you believe that it's something that's been around forever. You said, don't forget he signed a 400-year agreement with the Moors to be on this land. Well, I mean, yeah, if you're talking about, of course, the Moorish issues, and even though they betrayed it, but, they can't betray it in Masonic territories, right? Yeah, you shall know the truth, and the truth will create that freedom. It shall make you free, right? But what do you think happens then in the 1920s and 1940s through the 1940s? What's happening? Jim Crow, right? Famous "This is America" pose before he shoots the man. That was Jim Crow pose, right? Jim Crow. And so in Jim Crow, you have the same group of people, from the same generational tree, right, are telling you the South shall rise again, and that we're tired of these people, and we're going to put Black people as property only, not as human beings. And why are you guys not allowing us state rights to be able to treat people however we want? And why do we have to be in capitalism? Why can't we just go ahead and have chattel slavery again? It's the same thing. That's when you see it pop up again, right? Now, the next thing after that, when do you see it pop up again? In the 60s and 70s. What do you think is happening in the 60s and 70s? Black people are asking for civil rights. Wait a minute. These people who we fought a war against, who we always had stuff over. Remember George Washington, Virginia slave owner, right? John Adams had to work for George Washington, Virginia slave owner, in order to live in the White House to have slaves. James Madison, Virginia slave owner. Um, oh, I'm sorry. Thomas Jefferson, Virginia slave owner. James Madison, Virginia slave owner. John Monroe, Virginia slave owner. John Adams, the second, or well, John Quincy Adams, excuse me. He had to work underneath of Virginia slave owners in order to become president and live in the White House and be a slave owner. Andrew Jackson, seventh president. Tennessee slave owner. Martin Van Buren, whose first language is actually Dutch, right? The Dutch. Pennsylvania Deutsch, Pennsylvania Dutch. Nevertheless, the Deutsch. He was Dutch, Virginia slave owner. I'm sorry, New York slave owner. Excuse me. Yeah, New York slave owner. That's what it's based on. So the same people who are saying this is the history of our country are sitting up there saying, "Oh yeah, we don't like it when you guys are talking to us about um, doing this stuff and building this stuff and trying to make sure that black people actually that their culture can be represented and stuff." So they fight again. KKK comes out again. Now the KKK, just as Hoover and them were telling you in 1920, and the FBI was already telling you, hey, the KKK is dangerous. They're in every level of society and they're making your decisions. So the judges, the senators, the presidents, they're KKK. There's a matter of fact, I can't remember which one on the top of my head right now. It's not Coolidge, but I feel like it's somewhere in that area. I don't know if it's right before him or right after him, something like that. But there's actually a president that we know became a KKK member in the White House, and people that won't give you that much because they'll try to argue that much. So, okay, if you're going to argue that part with me, then let me tell you this much: we know for a fact that he had KKK movies and KKK members constantly in the White House. Right? So we're not making stuff up. Like, we know this stuff to be correct. These are the same people that fought in the 60s and 70s and waved the rebel flag again, which isn't a flag. And the Confederacy was never even authorized. It was never even sovereign. Then what do you think is happening again? Do you remember? See, we only think about what was going on in Los Angeles or the Los Angeles riots and things like that and Rodney King. Do you not remember in the 90s they were waving that rebel flag again? When we had somebody who was a poor representative of us, if I can be honest, at least for what we were trying to get at that point, but he was still somebody who was a representative of us. And he said, can't we all get along? Rebel flags came out. Now, all of a sudden, starting all the way back to, and really it goes back further than him, but going back to, there's so many names, I can't even keep up with them. Not Tamir Rice. Cat with the hoodie. I see his face. I'm having an issue with his name right now. It's not popping up in my mind frame. But ever since then till now, you've seen them Confederate flags come right back out, or those Confederate jacks come right back out. And people can't disprove what we're talking about. People can't disprove what we're talking about. They can only say, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. They don't have a problem with the information. They just don't like the information. They say, well, why teach the information? It's going to cause us to be this. You're the problem. See, now they try to do this reverse racism. You're the problem. You're the racist. They have to disrespect you. They have to go ad hominem. You're the problem. You're the racist. If you didn't bring it up, then this stuff wouldn't be here. Bruh, I wasn't here to create racism, and neither were you. But I dang sure ain't going to ignore racism, and neither should you. Right? And by the way, those who will say, I'm not a Republican or Democrat. So those who are coming up with that stuff, like, you got to go somewhere else with that. I don't care about Republicans and Democrats as far as the actual religion, because that's all it is a religion. If you want to worship whatever president you see is fit or whatever, and ignore the fact that they're just the lesser of two evils, which means they're still evil. By the way, they work together, so they wouldn't be the lesser. They're kind of equal in evil. But nevertheless, if that's what you want to do, then do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but that's not what I'm here to do. That's not what I'm here to do. Trayvon Martin, thank you. I don't know why that name was escaping me. That thing was dodging me. I was trying so hard to find it. Right? But that's what I'm trying to say. Now, on the flip side, can I say all that? And to say this, now you can't tell me about the Confederate flag and then tell me about critical race theory. But then guess what you can't do too? Don't tell me, and thank you, Bounty. Don't turn around and flip this now and try to tell me about the American flag and tell me about critical race theory either. Because there's more blood under that American flag than there ever was under that Confederate flag. I just lost some people on that. But that's real talk. You said, yeah, but to get control back, the right people, you can't Voting over feelings. Forget feelings. Forget voting. First of all, when somebody does the facts over feelings thing with me, first of all, it shows me that you have no empathy, because how somebody feels is factual. And you should figure out the context of what makes them feel that way. If you're not able to do that way, then you can't deal in facts, because how somebody feels is a fact. If my wife tells me that she doesn't like something I'm doing, it's based off of how she feels. And she's going to be using facts to tell me why she feels that way. I need to listen to how she feels, and I need to figure out contextually what the facts are she's using to get to the place of how she feels, because the feeling is the context. The fact is just as true as contextual facts. Now, she might not, now when I put it together, I might not agree wholeheartedly with what she's saying, but the fact that I can hear where she's coming from, it allows us to have a better marriage. Right? And we're doing this facts over feelings. Well, facts over feelings. Your feelings don't matter. Your feelings don't matter. I just come with facts. I mean, that means that basically you're not willing to listen to somebody. If you're not willing to listen to somebody, you have no empathy. If you have no empathy, forget even sympathy. If you have no empathy, then how are you ever going to get to a place to where all people can be represented? If you only want one group of people to be represented, then keep doing the Republican Democrat thing. Right? At the end of the day, look, I've been there. I've told you guys this. I've been there to see underneath. You got all these people arguing in Congress, and then they go underneath, and guess what? You just see them laughing with each other, high-fiving. Great job. I told you, I got family members that have been there. I got family members that have worked in high places and still do. And even if they don't work there anymore for the government, they talk to people in the government every day. That's making some of the laws that you think that are being done in Congress and all that. They talk to the people that make those things happen behind the scenes. And I promise you, they don't care about Republican and Democrat. It's a paycheck to them. Somebody tells them this is what we need to do. They figure out how to make it work paperwork wise. They give it back to them, and that becomes your law. The second we get out of that is the second that we come. And understand, the American flag has more blood, like I was saying, or what you call the American flag has more blood than what you call the Confederate flag. Right? The second that you realize that is the second that you're able to come out of that. But a lot of people are stuck in that because they're trying to represent something that doesn't represent you. If you understand the Confederacy was never sovereign, then why are you trying to make it sovereign? Unless you want something that nobody on earth agreed to. Nobody on earth was on the side of the Confederates. And the Confederates tried to get the Pope to be on board. Oh, yeah, they did. The Confederates tried to get, as Protestant as y'all want to claim, y'all tried to get the Pope on board. Y'all tried to get England on board. You said cotton is king. That's why you still go to stores today and people still talking about King Cotton products. King Cotton products, so where they were literally saying that nobody will ever come against the Confederacy because they don't want to get rid of this cotton. We are the biggest place where you get cotton from in the world. Everybody's going to bow down to us. That's what happened. Right? And people are still fighting for that. That nobody, not one person would do business with the Confederacy. At least not, publicly, because they knew to do it publicly meant, they said to have public business with them meant what? It meant that we were going to be in a position to where somebody would have to say they were sovereign. You keep waving the flag for something that never existed. If anything, if you want to wipe it away and you want to say critical race theory and wipe it away, fine, wipe away the Confederacy, wipe away the Confederate flag, because it never existed, technically. But you won't do that. But then you'll say wipe away the history of racism. His story, that your founding fathers is his story. Your founding fathers were okay with making sure that they had as many slaves as possible. All right, thank you, Bontworld Foundation. You said, well, people can make cotton other than Confederates. Yeah, but that's not the context, right? I don't know if that's what you're talking about, Marshall, but that's not really the context, right? Like, they that's what they felt, and that's probably why they lost in that regard, right? That's part of it. I'm sorry, we got a lot of people on, so I'm trying my best to hit all these comments. Thank you, everybody on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, the podcast. Matter of fact, if you're on the podcast, we probably only got about 5 minutes or so before the podcast will end. If you want to switch over to Facebook, TikTok, or YouTube, you can always come over, hashtag find Kofi, hashtag FIND, right? But once again, yeah, and it is to keep us divided. It is to keep us divided. And people are okay with the divide. They'll be with the divide. I'm Republican. I'm Democrat. Trump 2024. What's her face? What's the Candace Owens 2024? All these different things or whatever. Who cares? I don't care if it's Obama. By the way, Obama's not the only black president either. But people don't want to hear your story. The first president that came before George Washington was black. I'm talking about the very first president of the United States. Well, it wasn't even the United States yet, but of those 13 colonies that turned into 13 states that turned into 13, the word state once again means country. The first president of that union was a black man. George Washington told you he had two presidents before him he thought were his favorite, but we act like he's the first. You know why you act like he's the first? Because he's the first as far as when you guys get into the Masonic pledge to make sure that what the Moors allowed you to become. That's why your flag, when you call it an American flag, that American flag is a flag that's supposed to help people, or is supposed to say that you're allowed to do business. It's a commerce flag. That's the standard. The flag is a standard. It's a standard of commerce. You said "will just because." You said "well," I guess. Well, just because you prefer Republican doesn't mean you can't talk and agree with and help out Democrats. That's true. But let's be honest. I'm glad that that's where you are. Let's be honest. How many Democrats just go ahead and say, hey, we're going to be with Republicans no matter what, or they fight against somebody just because they're Republican? And how many Republicans just fight against Democrats just because they're Democrat? You're talking about in a perfect world. In a mature world, that would be the case. But this world, the system that we're in, is not mature. So I would agree with you. That's why I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. And as Malcolm X said, I'm not even an American and got sense enough to know it. That's why I'm okay with being a private citizen. You said most do? I mean, if that's the case, then let's stop being 50-50 on everything. You show me when people stop being 50-50 on everything, and then I'll go ahead and say that we must be united. You see what I'm saying? People vote because somebody's Republican. People vote because somebody was Democrat. The people who don't, I don't care if people say they don't. I'm talking about if you look at the results. If you look at what the United States Corporation or even the United States of America or the 50 countries or the 50 states tell you, they're all going to tell you the same thing statistically. If people live in this area, they're going to vote Republican. If they live in this area, they're going to vote Democrat. And if you put it all together, you're going to get about 50-50. And if you vote in black, usually black is going to be extremely Democratic, right? Whether they should be or shouldn't be. You said not many Democrats do, but I guarantee you that there's so many Republicans. See, so once again, you're doing Republican Democrat. Not many Democrats have the right to have the ability to be able to do what us Republicans do. Us Republicans, we think smartly, so we're able to do this and that or whatever. But the Democrats, they have room. That's the same thing we just talked about. You said not necessarily depends on culture, not race. Okay. So do you think that black people and white people are going to automatically have the same culture? You said that's not what you're saying. That's what you said. You just said Democrats are the ones who fight, but Republicans are not the ones who fight. Republicans are actually even keel and they want to work with Democrats. Democrats are the ones that don't want to work with Republicans. I know that you can only type so much into a line, right? I had Sister Tracy came and reminded me that I need to be careful about that, but I'm pretty good with words, right? So, but at the end of the day, like it's two sides of the same coin. It's two sides of the same coin. When do we say that, look, it doesn't matter who's been in charge. It doesn't matter if it's been a Republican, a Democrat. It doesn't matter if Obama was a black president, if Eisenhower was a black president, if Abraham Lincoln was a black president. It doesn't matter who's been the president. It doesn't matter what color they've been. See, we've got lost in the color thing, right? We got lost in the color thing. Color is important. What is my ethnicity? I'm not ethnic. But if you want to know where I come from a lot of different people. I'm Shwi, Ashanti Shwi, tiny bit of Igbo. I am Kemetic. I am Nubian. I am. The list continues. Hold on, give me some time. I am Yashria. I am Kush. I am Ethiopian. I am Southern or Central African. That's many different tribes, but there's a lot to even go into that. I am Taino. I am Cherokee, and I'm talking about not what I just take on. I am those things, right? No, I know what ethnic means in its original, right? So I don't have an ethnicity, but I get what you mean. Where do I come from? Where do my people come from? I know where I come from. Uh-oh. Well, some of my black buddies are redneck and as all out, and they were raised in the same area as me. Okay, that's great. So you're saying that all black people carry that culture? You see what I'm saying? We get in a gray area. Now, here would be my question to you. Do you think that a person that was taken from somewhere else, and therefore when they were taken there, now their children were forced to be in slavery and servitude, and then all of a sudden now that those people are free, so to speak, even though no black or white people are free unless you're sovereign, but these people who think that they're free now, even though they should have been freedmen but weren't even allowed to be that, do you believe that that was the culture they were supposed to take on, is that's a culture that somebody else gave to them? I'm not saying that you and your black buddies can't have conversation. That's not what I said. I'm not saying you and your black buddies can't be together. That's not what I said. Not close. That's not close to what I said. What I said is that it's cultural. And had they not been taken away, or some of your black buddies are actually from here, because natives and black people are just treated as one group. Matter of fact, in history, they tell you, in history class, they tell you natives were slaves first, but then they say, oh, we ran out of natives. No, you didn't. You had them breed, and you also had them mix in with the black people you're bringing over. That's why when they do tests, DNA tests, I'm not even into DNA tests like that, because you should be careful about how to use some of that information. Nevertheless, when they do the DNA test, they admit to you outright. They say to you outright, oh yeah, in the DNA test, that when they do them like 87, 88, 89%, somewhere in there, of black people that they test, they have native DNA. So when you're talking about the culture, yeah, I'm not here to say that somebody hasn't taken on somebody else's culture. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, though, somebody took on somebody else's culture, right? If you took on somebody else's culture, that's what you're dealing with. I'm sorry, Leela, you said exactly. We're still getting shot in the streets, no matter who the president is. You said, don't let the Gentiles take your point. Yeah, well, I get what you're saying. I don't consider all white people to have to be Gentiles, because that's not how that works, but I get what you're saying. Yeah. But, long story short, but, we could keep on having an argument about that. But my goal is to tell you about why you're disrespected. They disrespect you. I'm not giving you any information that you can look up. Matter of fact, when I tell you that you're in martial law, like, you could ask CSR, you could go and ask them, you could ask the government, hey, you could write them a letter. Are we still under martial law? If the president writes a decree that has to be established, or at least people have to start listening to, is that considered to be martial law? And they would say yes. Right? You could look up in 1862, could the Emancipation Proclamation be written by Lincoln if there was no martial law? Right? And the answer would be no. There has to be martial law for him to do so. Then you could ask, well, what caused him to be able to have martial law? Has that ever been repealed or gotten rid of? And the answer would be no, which means you're still under martial law. You hear what I'm saying? like this is what we're talking about. But people don't like the source that it's coming from. I'm not giving you anything different than the sources you would say, but you just don't like the source it's coming from. You said we were forcibly assimilated to white culture, which is still affecting us to this day. Yeah, because by the way, your black brothers that you're talking about, right? Whoever it was that was speaking, and no disrespect to you, but I just want to be honest. Let's have an honest conversation. Your black brothers who you're talking about, and who you have all this kinship with, and who are just as country bumpkin or whatever, as you would say, redneck country, out there living life, southern, southern sophisticated, from, I don't know, from wherever, Carolinian, M-I, crooked letter, I, crooked letter, I, humpback, I, wherever you from, New Orleans, whatever, right? If y'all went out and the police were called on you guys, and it was not true, what happened? Do you think that the police would deal with you and your friends the same way? And if you say yes, I mean, that's your right to say whatever you feel, but the reality is it's not. They wouldn't be treated the same way. Bro, all you got to ask yourself is, why don't you see the top of the flags during the public address? I mean, that's a whole thing within itself. And let's not even get into the gold fringe that's around the flag. That's a whole other thing, but people don't want to talk about that. You said since the executive branch is the head of the military, then isn't the nature of martial law built built in. I mean, not only is the nature of it built in, but it is. You're under martial law. That's why when you go to court, you got to ask certain questions and give certain stipulations and box them in. After a while, they're going to have they won't admit to you what you're in. Right? To admit to you what you're in is for them to have to let you in on the game. So eventually they'll stop short and they'll just kind of give you whatever you're asking for. You just have to know how to do that. And by the way, I don't give legal advice or financial advice. We're just talking about contextual facts. All right. Want to make sure I put that in the line so somebody tries to say I was out here doing that. I don't have to worry about those legal ramifications. If you want to take some of the classes and stuff that we actually do, we can have that conversation offline. Said a lot of law requires writing and everything is transitioning digital gets deep. Yeah, and by the way, if it's transitions into digital only at some point, then what's more, like people don't comprehend. Once again, like we don't comprehend how this stuff works. We think that it's written in a book, and this group of people they say that this book is qualified, and so since this group of people say this book is qualified, it must be qualified. No, man, that's wrong. That's wrong. Before there was paper, there was law. Before there was a human being, there were laws. Right? I don't care if you're in the evolution of creationism. Before there was a such thing as a human being, there were universal and natural laws. Why do we skip over that? Laws protect rights. Why won't we deal with the things that are lawful? You should let them start a race war where you good old bumpkins are then. Hello, Oklahoma, how you doing? Right? It's about lawful. People get so trapped in all this stuff or whatever. People are getting into all these different things or whatever. People get so emotional. Not understanding your emotion is tying you to your culture. Yeah, language is going to matter on these platforms that we have. Whether we're on the podcast, whether we're on TikTok, YouTube, or Facebook, language has to matter. What we speak, it means something. You said Dem versus Republic or Democratic versus Republican, nothing but a gang. I mean, it is, and people gang bang. But guess what? The United States of America versus Russia is the Republic of the United States of America versus the Republic of Russia, right? Or the states of Russia or whatever. That's gang warfare too. And for more of this or whatever, thanks for the reminder, babe. You can always, find out more and ask more questions and get deeper, whatever, and Patreon or reaching out to us or, we'll put our information up. We're getting ready to take our leave pretty soon, but you can always go on TikTok or the TikTok and just look up the link tree to be able to get more information on what we're doing and what we're talking about. But people aren't able to comprehend and recognize what's going on. They don't think about it. This is why we talk about getting our own land, right? This is why we talk about having our own food. Go outside of your Republican Democrat thing. Whether you're Republican or Democrats, guess what? Your people, if you have Republicans, you got some poor Republicans out there that aren't eating real food and are poor and are already dealing with a bad life. Now you want to give them a poor diet on top of that? If you are a Democrat, you got some people that are dealing with some bad things and that are poor, and now you want to give them a poor diet on top of that? At some point, forget the Republican Democrat label. At some point, stop trying to uphold a standard that they told you that has been nonsense. You're still dealing with racism, whether you've had a Republican or a Democratic Party president, right? JFK, who you say was so great, and all the black people came over to JFK. JFK has a diary that we can read for ourselves, and in the diary or journal, whatever it is, we can see in there that he said that Hitler is somebody to be respected and who history should change. Throughout history, we will hopefully change our perspective on who Hitler was. And don't forget that his father, Jack Kennedy, is somebody who was a supporter of Hitler and made it hard for people to stop being an isolationist nation and to go fight in what you call this great war of this great generation that existed. And don't forget that Jack Kennedy's people, they were out there bootlegging and doing stuff like that and killing off people in their society, and therefore won over society, took over it, bribed enough people, and put Jack in position. Jack was hoping to become president. When he realized that he wouldn't become president, he used his connections to make sure that his boys were going to become president, and he almost was successful in having two of them become president. Get out of the Republican Democrat thing. You're fighting a fight that's not even about humanity. Republicans and Democrats are based off of a system that says that you're a straw man, you're a fake person is more important than who you actually are. But they disrespect you so much that you're okay with being disrespected that you'll fight for the person that disrespects you. Come out of Stockholm Syndrome. You got a choice today. You don't have to be in Stockholm Syndrome. Thanks for the love, Chill Pill. You don't have to be in Stockholm Syndrome today. Come on out. You don't have to stay in that. You said what aspect of natural law will we use to stop the aggression to impede our practice of sovereignty? Well, number one, they can't impede your practice of sovereignty. Sovereigns have to remain private citizens, and the public has to uphold the right of the private. The only reason somebody can come out their private citizen is if a private citizen infringes the right of somebody else's sovereignty. Like if you kill somebody, then you can't be sovereign no more. If you kill somebody because you were protecting your rights, then that's different. But if you just kill somebody, yeah, you can't be sovereign anymore. If you start spilling oil in somebody's water supply, you can't be sovereign anymore, right? If you do drugs on your own land, look, man, as bad as I think that is, that's your right. Go ahead, do what you do. But if you start selling drugs to somebody else, we got to come at you because you're taking away their sovereign right to live. And all law comes from natural law. This is how it goes. This is how law works. It's actually kingdom law, marital law, but a lot of people don't add marital law in there. So we'll say kingdom law, universal law, natural law, then substantive law, then public and private law. Then you have off to the side, you got to have procedural law. What are the procedures that are in place to protect your rights? And then remedial law. What's the law in place to make sure that you can have a remedy to your situation? But we don't know how law works, right? And we do teach sovereignty 1 and sovereignty 2. So that's something usually I got to do offline because that's a lot to be able to try and teach on the live session, especially asking questions throughout the whole thing or answering questions throughout the whole thing. You said, but since we know they will not play by the book. No, see, that's the deal, is they have to. Like, for example, for you to go to prison, you have to sign off on prison. For you to have to get pulled over and pay a ticket, you have to sign off on driving. You have to get a driver's license. Driver's license says that you only have a right to drive. You're only licensed to drive because driving means that you're a coachman. It goes back to the times of being a coachman, to where you are licensed to be able to go from here to there or whatever, and you are allowed to therefore be employed by any company that wants to go by the procedural law of the United States of America. But you can travel in your own car without anything, but you got to make sure your paperwork's in order. But I know this for a fact that people that have taken our sovereignty classes and have done the paperwork correctly and updated their stuff, they've gotten pulled over and should have got messed over, and the police just came back and said, have a great day. And they didn't have license plates in order, they didn't have driver's license on them, they haven't any of that, but they didn't need it because they updated stuff in the system. If you go ahead and have private land is a micronation. If somebody comes on your private land, that's a problem. Why did they come on Tulsa's land? This is an unknown part of the story. They can come on Tulsa's land because Tulsa never made their land private. If they had made Tulsa a private property, it would have been pretty difficult. And if they had stopped doing business with the same people who were going to come and kill them, which they knew didn't like them, it would have been very difficult. And the world would have propped them up on this private land because the world was doing business with Tulsa. That's why America came and attacked, because America saw that the world was doing more business with Tulsa than they were with America. That don't even make no sense, but that's the truth. So we had to kill them. You got to kill them off. But a lot of people don't recognize that. You have the right to be able to do these things, but you don't know the laws. Laws do not give rights. Laws protect rights. Stop talking about civil rights are going to give you the right to be treated civil, right? There's already rights in place that allow you to have your own civilization. That's civil rights. Stop talking about police brutality. There's no such law against police brutality because police brutality is what police do. Policemen come from British people. Brutal is British. Right? A brutish person is a British person. That's what the word means. So you're not going to change something like that just because you don't like it. Right? But what you need to do is say, hey, stop circumventing my civil rights. Stop trying to get around my civil rights. My rights that are protected by my civilization, my culture, and there are laws in place to protect that culture. Civil rights law. If you're interested in finding out more about it, just, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, all you got to do is look in the description box with the videos. If you're ever on the podcast, just look in the descriptions with the videos. If you're on TikTok, we'll put up our information soon. We're getting ready to take our leave soon. However, just look up on the actual TikTok page, look up where it says, bio or whatever. You'll get a little bit of information there, but then look up where it says website. Click on Linktree there and look at the many different ways you can, learn more about what we do, what we talk about, and how we're trying to make sure that we change society. You said your person is not you. Depends on what person, right? What kind of person are we talking about? Thank you, Black Hair Bend. Appreciate it. But yeah, you got to know. We don't know how law works. So people will say they're not going to play fair. They've been playing fair. You've been playing by their. You haven't been following law, right? You haven't been following law. If you keep signing documentation, look, I'm black all day, every day, but on documentation, I'm not black. I'm not African American. And I used to be one of these people. I'm gonna put black down no matter what. But no, I'm not black. I'm other. If you want to put Moorish, I'm native. If you want to put, if you want to put non-citizen national, but I'm not black because according to their law, right? According to their law, if you put down black, that means that you are an artificial person. You can't be a real person and be black in this country. And so to some degree, people be telling you the truth, but they don't know that they're telling you the truth. I'm sorry, you said even the Bible speaks of brutish, and I often wondered if that was British. Yeah, well, the word brutish, it means British. That's where that came from. I don't know if that's the Bible is declaring that. I'd have to do some more research on it. The natural person versus fictitious person on paper. Yeah. So the natural man or the natural male, the natural female, right? The natural man, the natural woman. That's what you're dealing with. And it's a matrix of sorts. But you have the right to declare yourself private at any time. But then don't just be private on paper. That's the issue, because if you're private on paper, but you still get their benefits or privileges, then you're still messed over. Is there anything that we do large, they are always going to try to take us? Well, once again, but we've never protected ourselves. Tulsa was letting the very people who destroyed them on their land. You said, can I help you if you already have land? I'd have to see what you're talking about. We have to have some conversation. We can, though. Reach out to us. I'll have our information up above my head pretty soon. Question should be, why does race matter? First of all, when somebody says, why should race matters, period. Race is part of who you are. Now, what we mean by race, the social construct, even that matters. The color of my skin matters because, once again, this is my daddy. This is my granddaddy. If you look at the picture of this is part of what you see that shows that I'm part of him. Now, before you get to a place where you could be born without pigmentation, this and that, yeah, but we would say that there's something wrong with that. We would actually say that to not have melanin, right? Whether you're white, black, or otherwise, to actually be albino or deal with any type of albinoism is an issue, correct? Right? So it's not so much as far as why does race even matter, right? Race matters. The problem is, why doesn't treating somebody with respect, no matter what their race is, why does that not matter? See, that's the problem. That's the real problem. Race doesn't matter. I don't see color. If you don't see color, we would call that colorblind, and something's wrong with you if you're colorblind. That's a mutation or degenerative scheme. Don't not see color. Look, when I wear this, it speaks. Everything on this shirt, including this, what you would call a shirt, everything on this, it speaks. When I do this, it speaks different than when I do this. If I go to certain places, right, then it needs to be like this. It must be. It's required. I'm telling you something just by what I wear. When I go like this, it says something different, right? Race matters, but my race shouldn't matter as far as how you treat me. How you respect me or what my culture is matters. My hair matters. The reason why I have this hair is not just because I stood up one day and randomly said, oh, I'm going to grow my hair out. This is something that came from, I'm going to make a promise. And as long as I am able to do this promise and it remains healthy and it's not a detriment to me, right, then my hair should continue to grow. And at some point, you should see down towards the bottom of my body as it goes lower and lower and lower. You should start to see black hair, and you'll start to see gray hair, and you'll start to see white hairs and stuff. It even tells a story of who I am. And the longer that it looks this color, the healthier that it is. You still see that it's healthy. It speaks to who I am. Race matters as far as the social construct. You're talking about the color of your skin, right? Really, which race is not just the color of your skin, because somebody who comes from England is different than somebody who comes from France, somewhat, because they're closer related than we think. But England is different than France, is different than Portugal, is different than Spain, is different than the Ukraine, is different than Russia, is different than the former Yugoslavia, is different than the list goes on and on, right? Croatia, Prussia, right? Ireland, Scotland, Wales. Those are races too, if you want. But race just started off as competition. There's a competition between all these Eurocentric places where they were trying to get more land and more slaves and stuff. And then it became based off of, well, we can get more black people. Black people can be in the sun longer. Black people with melanin seem to do this and that. They're better for wet nurses and this and that. Hey, they even have some of the knowledge and stuff. So we'll take them, we'll make them teach us knowledge, and then we won't teach it to their children. Like that's when it became about color. But race originally wasn't about color, anyways. So even when you say race and why is it about race and this and that or whatever, once again, you don't comprehend the origin. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but we wrestle against principalities. A principality is an original place. And because they hate you, they don't want to talk about the original place. But the thing we're arguing about is the origin. If you know where you come from, you're a different type of human. You said that's why you put American. American legally means that you are a copper colored person that's indigenous to here. So even to put an American is a lie. If you're not a copper colored person indigenous to Turtle Island or to North America and South America, go look up what the original definition of an American is and see why they changed it. See what I'm saying? So like culture is important. That's the reason why we need to know this stuff. Every time you say you're an American, do you know that you're saying that you are identifying as the copper colored person who is indigenous to here? Every time you say you're a Canadian, you're saying that you have the same right, if not more right, to the land than the person that's indigenous to here. Every time that you talk about you're a Mexican, do you not know that you're saying that you have the same land or privileges or whatever, the same people that are indigenous to here? You see what I'm saying? We don't know what this stuff means. We just randomly putting this stuff out. You said Tulsa was destroyed from the air rather than totally on land. It was destroyed from the land. It was destroyed from the air. It was destroyed. You know, if they had water, they probably would have destroyed it by the air. They had police officers that came on, and that was how it first started off. It was a whole thing. But yeah, they definitely dropped some bombs on Tulsa for sure. That lack of melanin of certain type is a generative trait. Well, like the more melanin something has, if we started off, if the first creation or the first evolution, whichever one you believe in, started off with melanin, and we go further and further away from it, it means that we're losing something. Something's going on. If we live in a compartmentalized society, we are not encouraged to engage out of fear. I mean, that's part of it as well. You said, what if you say you're an earthling? I mean, at the end of the day, why is it? What? Look, let me say it like this. And forgive me for the noise in the background. Some work going on, but let me say it like this. Why it's a weird thing. It's like when somebody says I'm a black woman and somebody says, why you got to be a black woman? Why can't you just be a woman? Well, a black woman is a woman. She's a woman first, but unfortunately, she goes through some different things that other people do because she's considered to be a black woman. If somebody says I'm an Irish woman, somebody says, why don't you just say you're a woman? Well, she is a woman, but if you go to North Ireland where her people are still dealing with being under British rule, then you would discover that her being an Irish woman means she deals with different things than the other women do. You know, why you got to be a woman at all? Why can't we just be human beings? Well, let's be honest that women go through different things than men do. Let's not act like men don't go through anything. That's a whole weird thing that we do. But let's not act like women don't go through differences in this society because of the fact that they're just women. You said it's hard for you to log on. Your daughter's going to something. You know, and what's wrong with like, you see what I'm saying? So it's the same thing as like, I'm just going to be an earthling. Why can't we just all be Americans? Why can't we just be earthlings? Why can't, like, it's like, what's wrong? Like, look, okay, you're an earthling and you happen to be white. Does it mean that you're inherently evil? I don't go there. Some people try to go there. I ain't gonna go there. No, I don't believe you're inherently evil. But I believe that if you're not careful, there's some things in the society that teach you something different than what it teaches me. And by the way, with me too, if I'm not careful, there's some things in the society that teach me something different than it teaches you. So I've got to be empathetic. All right, Moto, be safe out there. Henry said, would you say it's harder to know where to go if you don't know where you're from, or better yet, your culture? Of course. It's always weird that we say that. Say that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you come from, or your culture doesn't matter. This, that, the third. But it's like, yo, like your culture does matter. Look at Willie Lynch and what he said. He said the thing that we're trying to take away from you is your culture. He said if we want to attack black people, or he ain't even call us black people. When you read his letter, when you read his speech, he just says N-words. Right? That's what he refers to as that. But he said, look, we got to tell them to get out of a traditional marriage and their culture, what a marriage is. We have to tell them that their marriage is not correct. You know, that's what he said. He said we got to teach them our language, but teach them a dumbed down version of our language. So when they hear it, they'll think that our language is their language, but really they don't understand that they actually had a language at some point. He taught, and some people would say I'm coming up with stuff on that. So let me say exactly what he said. He said that we have to teach them that when we say this is our house, he will believe it's actually our house when the reality is it's my house and he has to serve me as a slave. That's what they taught. That's what was taught to generations. They taught that it was better to whip your child than to have the overseer whip your child, because the overseer might whip him close to death, but you would only whip him where it felt like they were close to death. And so that was showing love. And so still to this day, we as a people will say, I only whip you because I love you. You think that was your culture? To whip your child because they love you? I'm not saying to not discipline, to not strike a hand, to maybe not have to pat the behind or something like that from time to time. But you think that was our culture, to whip our children and to brag about it? You think it was our culture to grow up like we do nowadays and to speak with one another and to be like, yo, man, you know what? Like, man, my mama, when she used to whip me, she used to do this. But my daddy, he used to take the extension cord out. But, you know, my father, he used to wrap the belt around his hand and give me that inch whooping. Oh, man, the inch whooping, man, that ain't nothing. Y'all know about that switch? Oh, don't tell me about the switch, man. We used to have to braid the switch. And we sitting up there, once again, like it talks about the Willie Lynch system, we're comparing, we're trying to see who got oppressed better. We're talking about Stockholm syndrome. You know? Copying what Master laid out, yeah. I'm not saying you can't spank your child, but to whoop your child, why would you whoop your child? Why would you whip your child? Who taught you, once again, who taught you to whip? Who taught you to whoop? Who taught you to cuss out the child while you whooping them? Listen, you little mother effer, if you ever, I'm telling you, some of y'all do that. Some of y'all gone through that. You gonna effing listen to me. You better not ever. Who taught you that? Come here, little N-word. Who taught you that? You think that came from you? But they disrespect you so much that you continue the tradition because you think that that's what makes you great. They called you out your name, sisters. They called you the B word so much that now you call yourself the B word and say that you taking ownership over it. They called you the N word so much that you call yourself the N word and you say you taking ownership over it. You said the narrative that is associated with the prefix is not always accurate, so it is subject to change. I don't remember what I was talking about then, in all honesty. Should I regret ever listening to my mom about that? The most painful thing I had to rectify? Hey. Yeah, I told you time and time again, this and that or whatever. Who you think that don't even sound like you, do it? That don't sound like your culture. That sounds like somebody who was over you saying that I got to whip you again. You went ahead and you stole some food because I ain't feeding you, you know, put your hand in the cookie jar. I told you not to go on that refrigerator. How many times I got to tell you? But that sound like when they wouldn't allow you to eat back in the day and Master would beat the brakes off you because you decided that you were going to eat real food instead of chitlins or chitterlings. That's not your people. All right, Breezy, how you doing? Like, that's not your people. That's not where y'all came from. Somebody taught you that. Somebody had to teach you that marrying somebody tall, dark, and handsome meant to marry a white man that maybe had a tan. Think about that. Does that make sense? I'm not saying don't marry a white man. If you marry a white man, marry a white man. Marry who you love. Just make sure he's going to support your culture. There's a lot of black people married to black people and they don't support each other's culture. So make sure the culture is going to come first, right? If your culture comes first, it's usually going to dictate who you marry. I'm going to leave it at that, right? But at the end of the day, it's our pleasure, Catherine. Thanks for being on. At the end of the day, you got to be in a position. You got to think about this. What's going on? What has happened to us? You said you were commenting on the prefixes we use to define African Americans or other Americans. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for making that clear. Yeah, I didn't know how to handle that. I appreciate I'm with you. Um, but we're saying all this stuff and we don't even know. We don't know where we come from. We don't know where these things come from. We don't know whose stuff we're perpetuating. I tell y'all, it always makes me sad. Every year you get to Women's History Month and everybody gonna talk about Susan B. Anthony. You're gonna have all these sisters talking about Susan B. Anthony, and she didn't even like black people. She couldn't stand black people. Didn't want black people to be able to vote. Was not gonna fight for that. Oh, South African now is okay. I see you. How you doing? And this is worldwide. This is worldwide. This is why we got to get together as a diaspora and come out of this foolishness, man. It doesn't matter if you're Shui, it doesn't matter if you're Ghanaian. It doesn't matter if you're Kemetic. It doesn't matter if you're Eritrean. Excuse me, I'm probably saying Eritrean. It doesn't matter if you're Ethiopian. It doesn't matter if you're from Congo. And by the way, we know those are false things that they put. South Africa, there's more than just South Africa or more than just the Zulus in South Africa, right? But we have this wild thing because we go off of what everybody says. The diaspora needs to be represented, right? It's the diaspora, and they disrespect you so much that they don't even want you to deal with the diaspora. Doesn't matter if you're Yashtel. It doesn't matter if you're a Moor, right? And by the way, a Moor was a group of people that were mixed anyways. A bunch of tribes that made up the Moors. You said you have a Susan B. Anthony Center at your local community college? Yeah. And Susan B. Anthony hated black people. She could not stand the fact that black people could vote and she couldn't vote. She even said, "How dare you let a black beast vote and not me?" She even made it a point when they said, "Would you fight for black people for their right to vote?" And she said, "I would not." She said, "Not only would I not fight for it, I would rather give my right arm than to fight for black people to have the right to vote." And I believe she said it because she was right-handed, right? She was trying to tell you. And right also means a position of power. Like, when do we get out of this foolishness? Republican, Democrat, with the Whig party in the Senate, this chieftain. At some point, it has to get to a place where the main thing is the main thing. People are going to bring up Margaret Sanger and make her a saint. And she's somebody who told you she didn't like black people. She didn't like Jewish people. And she needed to make sure that there was a way that they could kill off their babies. And she did the same thing that the slave master did to us back in the day. That's what she did. Oh, yes, she did. She killed off your babies. But because we love the oppressor so much, we continue to do what the oppressor does, allow the oppressor to do what they do. And we continue to fight for the oppressor. I try to tell ladies all the time, like, ladies, you should have more beef with America, whether you're white or black, than anybody else. Because they didn't give you rights. We talking about black rights, ladies. Y'all weren't even people. Y'all were still dealing with that Greco-Roman mentality, where they were messing around with each other. They were buck breaking. They were raping males, and they would use you to go ahead and make sure that they had babies. That's what they did to y'all. And you still out here talking about, I'm proud to be an American? You said you got in the whooping and assumed it made you a better person. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what you used to think. It made me stronger. It made me stronger, but gracious. You whipped your child and they can't sit down. Yeah, Margaret Sanger definitely had some evil stuff she did. What was her name? Margaret Sanger. Margaret, last name Sanger. Like, that girl can sing, Sanger. I believe. I'm pretty sure, right? Margaret Sanger, Susan B. Anthony. And they're going to tell you all these people that did all these heroic things. But white women who were fighting for the right to vote, they told our women, our women like Sojourner Truth. We talked about her thing over and over again recently. Ain't I a woman? That speech. It was only like 2-3 minutes long. And she gave it real quick because she wanted to come and speak on behalf of women. If they were talking about women's rights, well, then shoot, all of us should get rights. And they told her, no, we don't want you to come because your oppression, your fight is not our fight. And she showed up anyways and listened to her speech. Now that you have that context, go read her speech. And you will discover that, oh, white women weren't cool with her. And then somebody dares turn around like they did earlier, though, and flip it because they don't like the source it comes from and says, how dare you? Can't we all just be earthlings? Why do some of us have to be women? Or why can't there be just women? Why did there be black women, this and that? We're not the ones making it about that. So Journal Truth came to try and speak. This is 1851. That's how long this fight is going. We know it goes back past that, but we can trace this back to 1851 on paper easily, where they didn't even want her to speak. This was a woman that gained her freedom, could outwork any man, had what, 15 children or so, something like that, had to watch all of them, except for maybe one or two of them, something like that, be sold in slavery, and was coming to talk on behalf of oppressed women. And you said that her fight, of all people, wasn't your fight. But when I say it, see, they attack me. They attack you. They disrespect you. When we say the same thing that they did, they have to come behind it and say, oh, no, you wrong. You just looking for attention. Why can't you get over this? You know, slavery was a long time ago. By the way, you know how recent slavery is? Can I show you how recent slavery is? I mean, I could just go to the 1970s to where we know that people were still actually enslaved in the South. Like we know that for a fact that there were actually slaves that were, because they were black, enslaved on plantations in the 1970s. I could go just to last year, or I'm sorry, last year. I keep making that mistake. Silly me. This year, where we know that in Georgia, they found black and brown people, right, mostly Mexican, who were being raped and having to pick cotton and stuff, or having to pick fruit or whatever, and being enslaved and living on somebody's plantation. I mean, that was just this year, 2022, January, I believe, 2022. But may I show you how recent slavery is when people try to act like this thing is so old? You said your dad was alive. They refused to serve him at dinner. You're 19 years old. So we can keep on going with this. Right? But may I just interject something? May I just give you a little piece of something, if you don't mind, brothers and sisters? You know that we actually have not just written down, but we actually have recordings of people who were in chattel slavery from the 1860s, where we can listen to them in their own voice tell you what slavery was like. Can I say that again? Because people want to act like, unless somebody got a mixtape or something that's not modern, right? You know that we can legit listen to people who were alive through chattel slavery, and when you think it ended, even though it didn't, because the 13th Amendment said that chattel slavery still can exist as long as we just lock it up. But from 1865 and before that, people that were chattel slaves, we can listen to them speak about their experience still to this day in recordings. Yeah, and modern slavery, of course, the sex slave trade, unfortunately, is something that's big. But we can listen to people talk. That means that this was not a long time ago. Right? If you're looking to say, well, it was that's what they keep trying to do. It was so long ago. I can listen to my ancestor. I can listen to my uncles and them. I can listen to my granddaddies and them. I can listen to my mamas and them. I can listen to my grandmamas and them, and they will tell me what they went through. Stop telling me that was a long time ago. Yeah, they're sharecroppers who are out here. There's sharecroppers that are in today. And by the way, don't stop looking in the South only. Once again, go to upstate New York. There's sharecroppers up there right now. You said you listen to some of them, and they call it human trafficking now. Yeah, it's just slavery, chattel slavery. Hey man, thank you for the agreement, Sister Shantae. How you doing? Right, we could do a field trip. Y'all want to do a field trip one day? We could do a field trip upstate New York. Let's go look at some sharecroppers. They're still here. Is my point. They're still here. Y'all think New York City and don't think about the fact that outside of New York City, we're visiting people in upstate New York not too long ago, right? Upstate New York is scary for black folk. You don't want to get caught in certain places in upstate New York. You said you want to. Well, make sure that you come to the field truck October 14th through the 16th when we meet up. But we'll be up there. We'll be up in that area. We're gonna be up in that area soon. Y'all know we're gonna be up in all the areas. We're traveling a lot more, so we're looking at getting that stuff together. We got to get the people who are doing content. We're gonna have a meeting on Thursday. How we're gonna try and get to see how many people want to meet up with us when we come through certain places or whatever, and then we got to find a place to meet up. You in upstate New York too? Amon, Minister and Ice is up there. See if we can get y'all to meet up at some point. To the wildness of the system is how the place where a leader tried to put Africa under a resource. Oh, okay, I'll wait for the second part. Henry said, if it's people, living that can tell you their story, it definitely wasn't that long ago, right? Now, if we go by written stuff, oh, we got that all day, every day. But people want to act like, but once again, it's not about whether your information is correct or not. It's about where the information comes from. Because I say, let my people go, people say, that's a fool. But a white person says, maybe we should let his people go. And they say, well, we'll listen to it. Or if a white person says, I'm not going to buy something from you. A black person says, I'm not going to buy you. Well, see, money is more human than black people are to them. As far as white supremacists, I'm not saying white people are totally. You're in Oregon? Okay. Well, actually, if you rock with us or whatever for a little bit or whatever, we need to start setting something up in that area. We need to start doing some West Coast stuff. We don't really go into the West Coast too much. We were when Kofi_42 was huge and we had the massive numbers before they chopped it down and then chopped down the old YouTube channel. But since we're starting to get more people in that area, or in that part of the country, we need to start, looking at that stuff as well. So we can definitely look at some of that for sure. However, it's time for us to get ready to take our leave. And I'm trying to make sure that this podcast is uploaded while we're going. So forgive my head being down. I just want to make sure it's uploaded so that we don't have any problem getting it up for you guys later. But it's about they disrespect you, and we're so used to the disrespect that we just go ahead and roll with it. I guess that's just the way it's supposed to. I guess things are never going to change. We get excited. We go, "Oh, Obama was the president," right? I guess that means racism's over. No, right? We still waiting for. You know what? I was watching something recently too. This ticked me off a little bit. We don't really have time to jump into this, but this ticked me off so much. I was watching how Obama. You remember when everything was going on with Sioux Nation? The place that the same people that they took their territory and built, nothing but racist white people who helped to kill off natives and built Mount Rushmore on it. And they hired the same guy who had built Stonewall Mountain for the people in Georgia to be able to be part of the Confederacy. So the same guy that supported the Confederacy, they had him sculpt out Mount Rushmore and kick native people off their land to be able to do so, right? And keep trying to shove money down their throat, which is something like, I forget what it's worth now, 3 billion, something like that. But they won't accept it because the land was never for sale. And Lincoln and them, even before Lincoln, they started just taking more and more of their land. But there was a treaty that they were supposed to uphold, and they never have, right? Now I understand part of it because, in all honesty, there was a war that was going on. Not just the Sioux Wars, but look at the war, the Dakota people, the Lakota people, all that stuff that was going on, right? But you have to comprehend that you have these people who just keep getting done dirty and done wrong and messed over and I mean peed on in a certain sense, right? And Obama, the way he handled that whole thing was so despicable. It was so frustrating. If you don't know who even though they don't necessarily do a great job of showing them in the movie the way that they should. I mean, they show them some of the native language, which really doesn't exist that much anymore. So if you go watch if you've ever seen the movie, if you haven't, it's an old school movie nowadays. It's amazing how time flies. You won't be thinking about this stuff being old, but a movie with Kevin Costner called Dances with Wolves. They actually do speak as closely as they can. They actually speak the original language of the people, of the Sioux people. of those particular Sioux people and Lakota people even. They get as close as they can. And but those are the same people, those same people who they messed over and destroyed and all that stuff. Those are the same people that they were putting fire hoses on. And the same people that were saying, why are you coming through our land? It's supposed to be sovereign land. And here's the issue. Because once again, that's why you got to know the story, not his story, but you got to know the story. Here's where the real issue comes in, because people are confused. Some people would try to get you to believe, CNN even, CNN, some of you guys beloved CNN, who you think is too moderate to get into that and is so left that they can't have anything in common with the right, not realizing that the left and the right own all the platforms, and all the platforms only discuss what they want them to discuss. But CNN never once told the truth about how they'd be like, they would just listen to whatever the police told them. They never had anybody on the ground, so they just listened to whatever the police said, and they would go with what the police said. But they never told you guys when they would say stuff like, well, the pipeline's technically not even going through the Sioux land. It's like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Because here's the deal. First of all, on what you've left over, because they kept making it smaller and smaller and smaller, their rivers and everything are attached there, which means that if we know that oil spills happen all the time, people don't know this, but like in a 2-year period, this the same oil company was building through there. In a 2-year period, that oil company had over 200 spills. That's how often they spill. So they were like, if you're going to spill and put this stuff through our water and our river and our land, and this stuff is going to pollute, it's going to be gone. Then people were like, well, they could just clean up the oil spill, as if it's that simple. But people don't know a successful oil spill, what they deem a success as far as clean up an oil spill, is they would be able to clean up 50% of it. Because once oil is spilled, how do you get oil out? You don't, right? Like oil, like you get an oil stain in your shirt. How you get that out? Right? Like if black oil was, somebody would have put black oil on all this right here, this is never going to look white again. Right? It's never going to come out. Or at least what we consider the color white to be. Right? So all that's going on. And then what they didn't tell you is that, that they kept breaking the treaty over years. So Sioux land is supposed to be going into North Dakota and South Dakota and Illinois and Indiana and all these different places. But they've closed it off to where it's really small now. Right? Just like a big city almost. But so technically, as far as treaty is concerned, anything that you dealing with, some of y'all living in some of this land in North Dakota and South Dakota and Illinois and places, you're living in land that's illegal. You're not even supposed to be there. But once again, because we're so much into oppression, and Obama had time after time, they kept coming to him, asking him if he's going to change, and he kept never saying anything. He came out. The only thing that he did was in the beginning of his presidency, I think. He came out and he brought a chieftain, and he said, we got to right the wrongs. So we've got to make sure that this stuff is done correctly. And you had this chieftain that was in the background that's kind of like, okay, I'm here, but I really ain't hearing you say nothing of value. But he kept listening. I don't even know if he got up to say anything. But they said, we're going to make sure that we understand the sovereignty of the nation. Then when everything was going on, all of a sudden he was saying, well, we're just going to look at it. This is what he literally said, legit. He literally said, we're going to see what happens for a few weeks, for like 6 weeks. We're going to monitor the situation, and then we'll see what needs to happen. And then finally, towards the end, he finally said, okay, I guess we have to, enough people know what's going on here. Let's go ahead and pull out. And then here's the problem, is that right after he did it, all you needed was another executive order, because it's, another president right behind him. And here comes another president, and all he does is reverse it, because they all work for the same thing. He literally kept it at bay long enough to make sure that now the Democratic Party won't get the credit for just keeping the same thing. See, you got to understand, the president is not working for the people. The president's number one gig is to make sure he does what? To make sure he preserves the union. Does the union fight for natives, or does it fight against natives? Salah. Right? But we don't comprehend that the Black Hills, yeah. They say it's not, but if the oil spills happens, yeah. Oil and water don't mix. Yeah. I mean, that's lovely right there. Especially now, think about it. If you drinking stuff that has oil in it, what do you think that's going to do to your body if oil and water don't mix, and you're supposed to be 70+% water? Oh, the movie I was talking about, Dances with Wolves. It's the same people. even though they go out of order and they're out of context and some of this stuff, but they do a decent job. Movies on purpose lie. So you can't expect them to be historical documentation, but they actually do a pretty decent gig. Once again, Don, I don't think anybody said all white people. I made it a point to say not all white people, and I've made it a point to say that the real white people are people that you don't see, because the color white wasn't even considered to be a color until recently. The white used to mean bright or translucent or something you can see through. Yeah, you said that's what made you look at Obama differently? Merci. Okay. De rien. Right? And people don't want to talk about it. People don't want to be honest about it. But they disrespect you. This is how disrespected you are. And we got to get ready to take our leave, right? So we'll be back on this evening at 8 p.m. Eastern New York time for a shortened version of this. And then we're on Every Rising. If you join us for the first time, we're on Every Rising, which is, you would call the morning, Every Rising at 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern New York time. We're on every evening at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time, trying to get this background up so you guys can see the information. If you're on YouTube, you can just look in the description box. If you're on Facebook, you can look in the description box. If you happen to listen to the podcast later on, you can look at the description for the video. We have our all the information up for you to be able to contact us, and I'll go through some of that with you guys in a second. But we don't recognize these items, right? What's going on, right? And you have to recognize that the president's number one thing is to make sure that he is going to preserve the union. That's his gig. His gig is not to take care of you because you're black or white. His gig is to make sure that the union is preserved. What is the union based off of? Stop talking about the South. Before there was like think about this in the Confederacy, in the history of America, right? Let's do a quick math thing. We've done this before in the past, but let's do this again. All right, I'm gonna pull up a calculator real quick. Right? In the history of America, let's do this. America's been around. I know we haven't gotten to July yet, so we're gonna say a year and a half, but let's just go round up that year and a half to 1 year. Okay. So in the history of America, if we were to subtract, if we were to do 2022 minus, some people would go back as far as 1776. Some people say only go back to 1791. Some people go back to 1789. I'll go back to 1776 because supposedly that's supposed to be the beginning of us saying that we're a nation. That's what you guys are going to support on that, right? So that would be 246 years. Now, if I were to take 246 years, right, out of 246 years, only 4 years, technically 4 years of it was what? Confederacy, which never really existed, as we talked about earlier, as far as it was never accepted as a sovereign state. So if we were to do 246, actually, I'm sorry. So we were to take 4 and divide that by 246, that's going to give us our percentage of how much of American history is tied up in the Confederacy, right? And that would get us 0.016. Do you know what that means? That means that less than 1%, I'm sorry, excuse me, less than 2%, excuse me. So 1.6%, how much? 1.6% of American history involves the Confederacy. Did y'all catch that? So when people talk about the Confederacy, that's a drop in the bucket. That's if I was shooting a basketball and I took 100 free throws and I missed 2 free throws and made 98. That's how much more. Two missed shots. You take 100 steps, right? You take 100 steps. Only 2 of those steps have anything to do with the Confederacy and what you call your nation, your country. And you're so disrespected that they will disrespect you to teach you more about that than they will about Eisenhower was black, Lincoln was black. They'll teach you more about that than to teach you about the fact that, hey, before Japan came over and bombed us, we actually messed around with their submarines. They got a little scared, so they wanted to bomb us. And if they really wanted to take over America, they could have kept coming because we didn't have any way of stopping them. They could have just came all the way through California, all that stuff, and kept on messing stuff up. And we could have stopped them because we were already starving their people out. But we decided, we want to test this weapon, so we're going to put this nuclear bomb on them, see what happens. 2%, less than 2%. If I round it up, it's 2%. 1.6%. 1.6%. How many of you have learned so much about the Confederacy? And it's only 1.6%. It is only 1.6%. That's how much you learned. That's how much they don't care about you. They taught you more about the Confederacy than they taught you about Africa. You know more about that than about the kings and queens. You don't know about Anansi, but you know about Zeus. 1.6%. But you are. I'm sorry. I'm saying that wrong. Let's say it like this. You know more about General Lee than you know about Queen Nzinga. That's better. That one works better. Amen, MB. Same to you. Have a great day, rather. I'm sorry. Yeah. You know more about the Gettysburg Address. You know more about the Gettysburg Address. Let me just stay on West Africa. You know more about the Gettysburg Address. You were taught more about that, but they never taught you about Mansa Musa. Literally, the richest man to ever live by far. They spent teaching you about 2% of American history and said it's more important than your own. Some of you don't even know who the Wampanoag are. And you can't even talk about American history, especially the Puritans, without knowing who the Wampanoag are. Some of y'all don't even know that some of the stuff that ties you to Mexico is because Mexico, the land of the Olmec-She, these people that have mixed in with you already, actually mixed in with you because the Seminoles, led by John Horse, who fought against the Spanish and the English, then had to go ahead and get his people safely away and went into Mexico. And Mexico loved them so much and loved us so much and has so much love and respect for us because we are the same people that they made him a general. And still to this day, they respect us over there. Well, he gave money away. I don't know if he gave most of it away. He has so much money. It seems like it'd be most, but he's by far this is how rich he is. He's so rich that when you listen about people like Jeff Bezos and stuff, they only had a fraction of what he had. Think about that. They had a fraction of the money. I'm not talking about a fraction 1 out of 100. I'm talking about less than 1 out of 100 is the amount of money that he had. So he couldn't even give away the money if he wanted to. And he had actual money. You got the little fiat cash with no gold or silver to back it up. He had straight gold. And when he went to these places, he was so rich that he was giving away gold powder, not gold bricks. He was grinding up gold powder and giving it to people. And everybody had so much gold that gold couldn't even be used as currency. It took like 10 years for the economy to get back to where gold could be used as a currency because that's how much he gave away. But you learn more in school about the Gettysburg Address than you learned about that. You learned in school about Lincoln freeing the blacks, which he never did. But you never learned that Lincoln was black and native. That's why he was a Melungeon. You never learned that. Not in school. You might have learned it on your own, but you never learned it in school. You see what I'm saying? But they disrespect you so much that they'll teach you about the person who supposedly freed the slaves and never tell you that he was somebody who was actually a traitor to his own people. He didn't love us. He didn't love himself. Like, we got to begin to look at this stuff in a righteous place, from a righteous thought process. They taught you about 1%, less than 1% of supposed American history, and didn't even teach you that you were the actual American. If you come from copper-colored people who are indigenous to here, you are American. But they have the law set up to where you aren't even considered to be an American. Lincoln's real mama was a slave that was half black African and half black native. And Lincoln's real father was a white slave master. but passed, like a lot of people pass. But they never told you that. They never told you that Lincoln thought that black people were not up to snuff. He said that he said before he ran for president, he said that he would never have a society where black people were going to be treated the same as white people. He said that in 1858, was it? He got voted in 1860, became the president in 1861. People said, well, people can change. You think he changed that much in 3 years? And by the way, when he did what he did in 1865, he said that black people can be locked up and we'll make them chattel slaves to make sure that other people who were going to come back in weren't going to get the idea that, hey, black people are going to have more than you. He hated himself. He was a Sambo. And he had the top hat to prove it. Remember, Sambos wore. People don't even know how this stuff works. Remember, Sambos actually wore. You think of Uncle Tom because somebody messed up the story of Uncle Tom's Cabin, and if you've seen the movies or whatever. But Sambo was the actual bad guy. Uncle Tom was the protagonist. Sambo was the antagonist. And Sambo, and house people that were house Negroes, they used to put on top hats. And if you saw him with the top hat, it's a way of a joke of being like, oh, this person, we as white people are saying this person has authority like we do, but he doesn't have any at all. That's what Lincoln wore. He wore a huge top hat. Did he not? It was. They were telling you about your story, and you didn't even know because they taught you more about the Confederacy, which is not even a sovereign nation, never was and never will be. But never taught you about your holy nation, and you're being a peculiar people, and you're being a chosen generation, and you're being, holy nation, chosen generation, peculiar people. What's the one I'm missing, y'all? Holy nation, peculiar people, chosen generation. Oh, and a royal priesthood. They taught you more about that. But literally, he was a Sambo, top hat. Go look at the newspaper articles that the reason why like stuff like you grew up with, I forget, like Jeff and all those people that they used to have down in the comics and stuff like that at the bottom, and they'd have where you could see more than you could read what was going on. The reason that they used to have those comics written out like that where they wouldn't even have words is because most of the people in America couldn't even read. So they wanted to make sure everybody would see the propaganda. And so they would have propaganda out. And for some of the propaganda they used against Lincoln, they had black people that looked like apes and had the big lips, the stuff that would later become really popular with blackface, which was already starting around that time. And they would have these black people that looked like apes with fur and everything, and they'd have you carrying Lincoln on top of you, and Lincoln had big lips too. They knew who Lincoln was. They told you who he was. But they disrespect you so much. They disrespect you so much, they think that you're stupid enough. They believe that you're stupid enough to continue to remain stupid. And don't take that wrong, because I'm not trying to say you're stupid in what I'm saying, but hear what I'm saying. Dr. Laya Africa, who my wife and I consider ourselves to be disciples of, he is somebody who says a statement that blessed me so much. I'm telling you, and then we're going to end on this and take our leave for real after this. He blessed me so much with this statement. Thank you, Sister Sharice. He said that he said it takes a lot of effort to stay stupid. He said it takes a lot of effort to remain dumb. He said, like, once you know the truth, for you to remain in cognitive dissonance, to stay stupid, it takes so much effort and energy. It just takes so much less energy to just speak on truth. Why can we speak on this for hours and hours a day? Because it's easy to talk about truth. Right? You get a headache when you have to keep up a lie. When you got to lie about the fact that you want to go to the job that you never wanted to work in the first place. Come on, right? Like, it takes more. Yeah, it's a choice, but it takes a lot of effort. It takes more effort to stay dumb. It takes more effort to not recognize who you are. It takes more effort to not build up a society based off of who you are. It takes a lot more effort to stay stupid. I was once stupid. I was once ignorant. I was once somebody who thought that I was going to serve my country and that was going to be the end of it because I showed up. That's what they told us, right? Because I showed up to serve my country. Everything was going to be all right. As soon as I showed up, September 11, 2001, told me that it wasn't true at all. But then I thought, surely, if I vote for this first black president, because I didn't really realize how many black presidents there were. So surely if I, this is the first one they're going to recognize. If we just vote for him because he's black, everything's going to change. I dismissed knowledge I had and said, I'm going to go ahead and go with that. It took effort on my part to remain stupid. Now, I don't know where you are in your walk, so I'm not going to say you're stupid per se, right? I'm not trying to call you a stupid person. I'm telling you where I was. I look back at where I was, and I look at some of the stuff that young Kofi was talking about. That brother was stupid, right? Right? I'm talking about me. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me. When I look back at that brother did some dumb things. Not dumb, excuse me, stupid things. Dumb just means you can't speak, right? I wish sometimes that brother was dumb because he says some stupid stuff, right? It takes a lot less energy for me now to be in truth than it does to remain stupid. It takes a lot less bloodshed in truth than it does to remain stupid. Do with that what you will. Once again, I'm not calling you stupid. I just wanted you to know how stupid I was and how a lot of people out here are living in stupidity because they'd rather live in cognitive dissonance and keep giving so much energy towards it rather than come together. That being said, we're thankful to you all. We praise the Most High. Please check out stuff on the website. Once again, if you go to the calendar, if you look on the calendar, my wife has a spot on there now to where it says that you can click on. It talks about reoccurring events. If you need links for certain things, if you need information on our prayer service, if you need information on Bible study, if you need information on men's meeting, women's meeting, all the stuff that's going on. By the way, sisters, I do have it from the source herself, the Honorable Mind. She says that you guys will from now on be having your women's meeting every fourth Saturday. So brothers, we'll be keeping every third Saturday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time. Sisters, you'll have every fourth Saturday, 7 o'clock. Sorry, every fourth Saturday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time, and we'll go from there. All right. So thank you so much. Those who are doing contacts, we're gonna and calling people and checking on people for us. We're gonna make sure that we have a conversation on Thursday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time. Don't forget Thursday Rising Prayers coming up, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern. 7 o'clock a.m. Eastern, New York time. And we're thankful and grateful for everybody for being on. We appreciate you all. We're excited. We're thankful for what's going on. Thank you once again, Minister Tamara and Minister Anais, for stepping up in a big way yesterday. We appreciate you all. We're looking forward to having more and more of that stuff going on. And we're excited. Yah's Land Project, YLP 83. Those of you who are part of that, don't forget that we're going to have more meeting concerning the land and issues coming up on Saturday. Y'all pray for us. We're going to be traveling on the road again on Thursday. So pray for our safe travel and journey. And those of you who are in the Southeast region in the next couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, you might need to either prepare for a hotel, or if you or don't mind driving maybe 3 hours or so or something like that, and driving back. Traveling 3 hours or so and then traveling back. If you're in that Southeast region, anywhere in there, Tennessee, I know we got a couple people over there too. Maybe that might be something. But if you're in any of those areas, we're going to look at possibly trying to meet up somewhere in the next 2-3 weeks. And then after that, Florida, we got to figure out Florida. We got to figure out the Central North region. We got to figure out the Central South region. Of course, we're going to meet up October 14th to the 16th with everybody for convocation. So let us know by April 23rd about that. Don't forget, Passover is right around the corner, April 15th. And that's going to be at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time. If you need to get that day off, try to see if you can. We should treat it like Shabbat. Even though it's a Friday, try to treat it like Shabbat. I know we're in the land of our captivity, so do what's possible. We're thankful and grateful. Georgia is in that Southeast region. So like we said, if you're in that Southeast region, Georgia, the Carolinas, Tennessee area, Southern Virginia, et cetera, we're going to try and see if we can get a place to where everybody can at least travel to each other coming up within the next 2 or 3 weeks. As I said, though, for all the areas, we're going to make sure that we have our people contact you all. We're going to work that out. We're going to make sure our contact lists are as up to date as possible. And, starting probably next week, sometime on Monday or so, we'll try to make sure that we're reaching out to everybody to see what their availability is, or not even that, to just start giving out a date and let them know this is what we'd like to do. Et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, the baptisms are going to happen in October 14th to the 16th. So when we get to that, we'll work on the baptisms. If somebody really, really wants to get baptized before then, and we meet up and you meet up with us, we can see about making that happen somewhere. We just have to find a place to make that happen. That being said, though, we appreciate the King, Queen, and each and every one of you. Thank you so much. As always, This has been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. We ask that you study this word and meditate on it so that you not only hear it, but you can be doers of it as well and execute in this so that we can become better and greater as a community. Once again, please check out my wife, the Honorable Maya, at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. You can follow her on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. She has many tinctures, which are medicines to be able to help you as far as healing. And so please support her business. And what she's doing, which is her business, is making your health her business. And you can contact her. Just reach out to any of the information we have all over the place on all these platforms. Once again, if you're on TikTok, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, just look in the description box for more information on how to get in contact with us. If you're on TikTok, simple enough. Just simply, not only you have a little bit of information above my head, but you can also just go to our page and just look at the bio a little bit, but then also go to where it says website, click on Linktree there. And as soon as you do, it'll take you to everything that you want to know. So we thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate your gifts, resources, time, talent, effort, energy. Those who are helping us to build land, those who are helping us to build a figurative place of land, those who are helping us with our virtual land, whatever it is. We're thankful and grateful. Had a lot of people come on today, and we're appreciative of the number hitting there. It's because of people like you who've been faithful and helping us to build up, even when people try to tear us down. Moderators, if we start getting to those numbers again, be ready, because we might have to add a couple more. I'll pray about it and see, maybe contact a couple of you to see if maybe you don't mind being moderators, because when we get to where it was today, I think, what was it, we were up to 540 something or 550 people at one point, maybe a little more than that. We were getting up to 1,000 people plus, and certain ones before. When we get to those numbers, that's when people come in and they try to lie on you and try to do this, that, or whatever. So moderators, I appreciate you so much. We honor you. That being said, thanks you again. As always, have a great day. Study this word, meditate on it, help one another, love one another, reach out one to another. And please remember, as always, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom. And talk to you guys later. After the class, basic Hebrew class later on, 9:00 p.m. Eastern New York time. Second line for the day, 8:00 p.m. Eastern New York time. Those who are on Patreon members, right? Look up Kofi Ofori if you try to be on Patreon. But Patreon members, 7:00 p.m. Eastern New York time, we'll have our live. So I have a bunch of links and stuff that pop up because we got to catch up with that. But we'll make it a point to make sure that you guys have a live that starts at 7:00 p.m. Eastern New York time. Everybody else will join us at 8:00. All right. Appreciate you. Much love, much respect. Talk to you guys later. Shalom.